We're all here. Sorry about that. We will begin tonight's meeting with a moment of silence, and I did want to call out a few things. I know at our last meeting, we recognized Andrew Vaughn, who was the firefighter who died during the recruit camp. But unfortunately, we've added to that list in the last few weeks. We'd like to send our condolences and think about the family of Lieutenant Don Walsh, fire engineer Rick Merle, and his wife Tanya, who is still grievously injured and is in the hospital. Sharon Schaffner lost his daughter Journey in a car accident, and I think that funeral was today. She was 6 years old. And then, of course, former Fire Chief Ray Flowers. So public safety, especially the firefighters, they've been through an awful lot in this last month. If we could keep all of them and the families in our thoughts and prayers. Thank you. Thank you. Mrs. Hoffman, would you lead us in the pledge?
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Welcome to the Katie Dorset Council Chamber. Residents may sign up to speak by 6 p.m. using the Q-Minder kiosk just outside the chamber door. Please see the courier if you need any assistance. To comply with requirements by the state in regards to Zoom meetings and to provide an optimum experience for the public, council will verbalize motions and votes will be conducted by roll call and electronically. Each member of council must vote unless there is a direct conflict. We do allow and welcome speakers to address council items on the agenda. Council respects the right for the public to speak about matters of concern that can be addressed by council. Each speaker will be allotted 3 minutes. Comments that seem to be intended to incite unlawful behavior will be deemed to be out of order. Zoom participants are requested to mute their microphones until called upon to speak. Since we did not have our town hall meeting earlier this month, we will also have speakers from the floor at the beginning of the agenda. Zoning matters do allow for a 15-minute presentation, both for and against the rezoning. There is also a 5-minute rebuttal period for each side. Following the introduction of each case, if applicable, staff will make a presentation before opening the floor for questions from council members. The mayor will call upon speakers in the order in which they registered, and at that time, their lines and counts will be unmuted. All speakers should identify themselves with their name for the record. Once an item has been completed, the meeting host will remove speakers by Zoom for the said item. Council will make a motion and second to close the public hearings. The floor will be open for council deliberation and discussions, motions and seconds. To move an item, they must be clearly identified by raising of hands, being recognized by the mayor, and voted on by roll call. The mayor will announce the vote results. The city of Greensboro is committed to promoting an environment that is free of discrimination, bias, and bullying. Thus, harassment, words, jokes, actions, or comments based on an individual's sex, sexual orientation, race, ethnic background, age, religion, physical condition, or other legally protected characteristic will not be tolerated. The next city council meeting will be Monday, August 1st, due to National Night Out events on August 2nd. In order to be considered, written comments must be submitted online through the city's website, www.greensboro-nc.gov. We do have a consent agenda this evening, items G1 through G31, which are a grouping of agenda items that are voted on with one single vote to expedite what are believed to be routine and non-controversial items. Any council member may withdraw an item from the consent agenda due to a conflict of interest or for the purpose of voting no. Items removed from the consent agenda for discussion will be placed on the August 16th City Council business agenda. This meeting does include closed captioning. Depending on the length of tonight's meeting, we will take a short recess around 7:30. There has been a request from Councilmember Thurm on H6, which is a public hearing for an ordinance annexing territory into the corporate limits for property located at 5701 Westgate City Boulevard, 1.6 acres, ZAS Ventures LLC. And item H.7, public hearing for an ordinance for original zoning for 5701 Westgate City Boulevard. Mark Isaacson for Mabus Tire Supply LLC on behalf of ZAS Ventures LLC. It's been requested to postpone this meeting to August 1st without further advertising. I believe that has been agreed upon by both the applicant and the neighborhood. So do we have a motion to postpone that item until August 1st?
So moved.
Moved by Mrs. Johnson, seconded by Ms. Abuzawader. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? That passes unanimously. Let's see. The applicant for item H.8, a public hearing for the resolution closing Luray Drive, High Drive, and a portion of Hudgens Drive, the Greensboro Housing Authority of the City of Greensboro, has requested a continuance of this item until the August 16th, 2022 City Council meeting without advertising. That has been requested by the applicant and agreed to by city staff. Moved by Dr. Wells. Seconded by Mrs. Thurm. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? And that passes 9-0. We now move on to the public comment portion of our agenda. We did not receive any written comments. Each speaker will be allowed 3 minutes. Let's see. We have Hester Petty, followed by Louis Medina, followed by Billy Belcher.
Good evening. My name is Hester Petty. Good to see y'all. Good to be here. Good to be alive. Tonight, I want to address a statement that Katie Rasabi made at the last public comment period about the police, who she said, and I quote, who put their lives on the line for us, the citizens, every day to keep us safe. How many times have we heard someone say that? Police officers put their lives on the line every day. It's a well-worn phrase, and it's repeated so often that it's considered fact by some people, but in actuality, it is fiction. The graph I have up there is from the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics website. It covers on-the-job fatalities in the year 2020. That's the most recent one I could find. The numbers up there, which you probably can't see, represent the deaths per 100,000 full-time workers in the 10 most dangerous professions. The most dangerous being at the top, fishing and hunting workers, and then down at the bottom, farmers and ranchers. If you go to page 2 on the handout I gave y'all, that's where you'll find out that the police are number 18, not in the top 10, not in the top 15. 18. And according to the statistics, the guy that's putting shingles on your roof is 3 times more likely to die on the job than a police officer. A logger is 7 times more likely to die on the job than a police officer. As for the myth that it's police officers who keep us safe, according to the New York Times article in 2020, a typical shift, 50% of the officer's time involves responding to non-criminal calls and traffic problems. Only 4% are responses to violent crimes. That meeting, Katie Rasabi called people like myself reckless because we questioned why deadly force was used against Joseph Lopez instead of de-escalation. We asked why Marcus Smith was hogtied by the police. and why officers have used that maximum restraint on Black people 3 times more often than on white people. And consider this, nationally in 2020, 48 police officers were shot and killed by civilians. Over 1,000 civilians were shot and killed by police officers. It's time to rethink what public safety means to us in Greensboro. That is not reckless. It's common sense. Thank you.
Thank you. We have Louis Medina, followed by Billy Belcher, followed by Tracy Clark.
Hello. My name is Louis Medina. I'm with the Working Class and Houses Organizing Alliance. Today, I'm here to address the indictment of Hamilton for the murder of Joseph Lopez. I don't know if everybody watched the video, but in the video, for the viewers at home who couldn't stomach it, Hamilton threatens Joseph Lopez with a dog. Lopez was afraid, obviously afraid. In a response, Hamilton went in and shot him in the head. We're always told to comply to the police, right? In a situation like this, if Joseph Lopez complied, he risked getting torn apart by a canine. We have to ask ourselves, right? Why would we comply with that? Why comply with the police if the response at that point is to risk your life being torn apart by a dog or to get shot in the head? We should also ask ourselves, why is this the first time a police officer in Greensboro has ever been indicted? A lot of people want to celebrate that, right? That's kind of embarrassing. When a police officer kills someone, the bare minimum is that they be indicted, they be arrested, they be treated with the full extent of the law, right? Why wasn't the police officers who killed Marcus Smith indicted, charged, fired, anything? And I think, as people want to celebrate this situation, they would take this as a great victory. It is obvious to me that Joseph Lopez wouldn't have been killed, wouldn't have been treated the way he had been if he was white. I don't think Marcus Smith, I think we can all admit that Marcus Smith, the reason he was treated the way he was and killed passively like that by multiple police officers and the city council pretended it didn't happen as long as they possibly could. That happened because he was a Black houseless man, right? And until the city council starts addressing the racism, the overt racism of the police department, nothing's going to change. So that's what I'm demanding today. I mean, I'm going to keep demanding. It's not our first time demanding it, that y'all finally address the racism in the police department. I see that the mayoral candidates, is that how you said that, are like, I don't know, celebrating and patting themselves on the back for putting more funding to police. Why would anybody celebrate that from a city council that won't even address its police department, its racism? Why do we want more police? For who? Who do they serve? As a Latino man, I don't think they serve me. I assumed you all were going to answer my questions. Actually, I'm done. Thank y'all.
Thank you. Billy Belcher, followed by Tracy Clark, followed by Carrie Ann Broadway.
Good evening, I'm Billy Belcher with the Working Class and Houseless Organizing Alliance. On November 19th, 2021, the Greensboro Police Department killed Joseph Lopez. One officer, Officer Hamilton, was arrested for that crime, but Officer Hamilton's actions weren't any different than those of the cops who were with him that night. He was the team's trigger man. They've arrested the trigger man and let the rest of the gang go free. To single Hamilton out for blame is not justice. And the trial of Officer Hamilton will leave some important issues unresolved. And I know the city council, you'll be happy to leave those issues unresolved. So I want to make sure you get at least a couple of minutes to think about them. First, is the use of the dog on Lopez. The police dog is not a substitute for deadly force. It is deadly force. It is a dog that can kill you. Is that clear? Do we understand? Instead of trying to talk the nonviolent Mr. Lopez through a crisis he was clearly having, Greensboro police decided on potentially deadly force and used a dog. With Mr. Lopez trapped in that shed, Mr. Lopez was safe, the police were safe, and the public was safe, but our department still used the canine unit. If that is policy, then policy says that human life in Greensboro doesn't have much meaning. When I see the use of the dog, I remembered of how the police commonly used the rip hobble so often until Marcus Smith was killed, and then we finally made that stop. I think we should investigate how we use the canine unit, whether we're using it in situations where we simply don't have to. Second is the phantom object in Mr. Lopez's hand. In the footage released, we hear Officer Hamilton say he saw something in Lopez's hand. I assume you watched the video, so what was that object, right? There wasn't one, was there? I mean, the police didn't retrieve anything. And Lopez's phone was in his pocket. We see the cops remove it. And none of the police on the scene seem surprised at this discrepancy, as if Hamilton's statement is just something you say for the camera and not something to be taken seriously. And so one seriously wonders if it isn't an unofficial policy to exclaim something in his hand for the camera whenever a Greensboro police officer fires on a civilian. The actions of Hamilton and every other police officer around him that night on the videos suggest that something like that is indeed the case. If you think Hamilton was arrested justly, then you ought to call for all of them to be arrested. And if you don't want to admit that they're all guilty, you might as well demand that all the charges be dropped. The whole police department is designed to kill the Joseph Lopez's of our city, and that needs to change.
Tracy Clark, followed by Carrie Ann Broadway, followed by Susan Shore.
Hi again. Last month, I emotionally spoke about the issue of gun violence across our country and city. As I mentioned, my husband is a surgeon at Cone. Last year, we went to lunch with my friend and her boyfriend on a Thursday. By that Sunday, he was shot to death by a disgruntled neighbor. My husband would have operated on him had he not bled out in the emergency room. This issue is extremely personal to me. I sincerely hope it's not personal to you, but horrifically, I suspect it might be for some. But complaining about an issue is worthless if you don't simultaneously propose solutions. I'm proud to see that we are making progress finally at the federal level and here locally. Last month, the Guilford County Board of Commissioners passed a resolution declaring gun violence a public health crisis. Mayor Nancy Vaughn signed a proclamation declaring June 3rd as Gun Violence Prevention Day and has supported other various gun safety measures in the past. From the bottom of my heart, thank you. Let's keep up the momentum. Here are my two proposals for our city to reduce gun violence. First, we need to ensure gun owners better secure their firearms. According to Greensboro Police, 581 guns were stolen from vehicles in 2021. And disturbingly, at least 4.6 million children in the US live in homes with at least one loaded, unlocked firearm. So we can assume that nearly 10% of children here in Greensboro are one curious arm's reach away from potentially deadly disaster, as horrifically was the case for the 3-year-old of the irresponsible Elon police officer. With the public crisis resolution passing, I expect our health department to prioritize an educational campaign around safe storage. And I hope we, the city council, can support distributing thousands of free gun locks at civic events. North Carolina House Bill 427 is a firearm safe storage awareness initiative, yet has been stalled for over a year now. We should all pressure our legislators to push this bill forward to significantly help our local efforts. Second, we need to educate everyone on safe gun ownership. Every town has an excellent program called Be Smart. S, secure all guns in your homes and vehicle. M, model responsible behavior around guns. A, ask about the presence of unsecured guns in other homes. R, recognize the role of guns in suicide, as it tragically was for my friend when we were in college. And T, tell your peers to be smart. This program is something we can and should implement in our school systems and during local civic events. I envision this program to be just as effective as DARE was when I was a child. Last month, my daughter attended Safety Town by the Greensboro Police Department, where gun safety is a core component of the curriculum. I publicly applaud everyone involved with this program, and I would love to see it significantly scaled for all local school children. Of the 70 children in my daughter's class, less than 10% were Black. This is concerning since African-American children are 15 times more likely to die by firearm than their white peers. The city should work with the school board to incorporate it into the elementary school curriculum. It's truly an amazing program that's better supported financially and logistically to enable all Guilford County children to experience it. These proposals alone won't solve the gun violence epidemic, and I defer to you all with your expertise of what else we can and should be doing here locally. Thank you.
And so Mayor, as the last speaker, I just want to make her aware, there is a safety town coming to Barber Park. So sometimes you have to put things in communities where people are.
Yes, I know, there's difficulties with parents traveling there.
Right, that is correct. So we are addressing it. We have addressed that.
Susan Shore, followed by Del Stone.
Good evening, council people of Greensboro. Thank you for the opportunity to speak on today. My name is Susan Shore, and I hope you won't call me Karen after you hear what I have to say. I live off of Big Tree Way, which is in the heart of the Bump, the busiest shopping district in Greensboro. Not only is West Wendover a highly trafficked area, it is also a highly populated area. The issue I want to address is that there is no grocery store on Wendover Avenue. If it has not been brought up before, I have questions. Has no one noticed? If it is a known fact, why has nothing been done about it? What constitutes a food desert is when an urban area has no supermarket within a mile and high rates of poverty. Depending on the source, anywhere between 18 to 20% of people in Greensboro live in poverty. More than 50% of the population is made up of racial minorities. Over 15,000 people live in the 27409 zip code, which only covers part of Wendover. That is a lot of people and possibly a significant amount of poverty to contend with, especially considering populations who are already underserved in our society, like only 8% of African Americans living in a census tract with a supermarket. Oh, well, you have Costco and Sam's Club over there. First off, you have to have a membership, so these stores are not accessible to everyone. Secondly, 72% of households in the area are young single adults, and 76% of households don't have children. Buying in bulk just isn't feasible. Well, what about Walmart and Target? How many of you want your main source of groceries to be from Walmart, Target, or Dollar Tree? At one point, I stopped buying produce from any Walmart because the quality was so poor. And I've seen all kinds of nasty stuff in carts at Walmart in addition to people's pets. This is not something I've ever seen at a regular grocery store. Because of this and other reasons, I switched to Target, which is a little bit more expensive. And though the quality is better, the selection is smaller. They are always out of stock with something. The thing is, none of these stores mentioned are primarily grocery stores. It's not what they're known for. This is not a great comparison, but it's like being relegated to Burger King for chicken sandwiches. I mean, they have them, but it's not what they do best, or maybe even well. There is plenty of space to build along Wendover, and there's more than one empty building already in existence. The old Macy's building would be a perfect spot. Even the downtown area has at least 2 or 3 grocery stores. My concern is not only for the present, but also for the future. We've seen lockdowns, shortages, et cetera, in the last few years, and we should be putting plans in place in case something similar happens again. What if truckers protest and/or there's a gas shortage? Walmart and Target shelves will be empty. Where will we go then for food? Why not make sure that stores like Lowe's and Food Line are present? They sell locally grown and harvested food. This way, if there is a shortage for whatever reason, we aren't dependent on nationwide companies to bring us basic necessities. This makes it easier to provide access to fresh quality food, makes the community more self-sufficient, and supports the local economy. Win, win, win. To sum it up, Wendover not having a grocery store is a big problem with lots of implications. The good news is there are multiple ways to address it, and we have the means to do it. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Do y'all take copies of stuff?
Del Stone, followed by Lewis Pitts, followed by Robert Hoke.
Good evening, I'm Del Stone with Working Class Analysis Organizing Alliance. So as we all know, on June 24th, the United States Supreme Court overturned Roe versus Wade, and with it, the constitutional right to abortion. This means that protecting and expanding abortion access at the local level is more critical than ever. City councils across the country are actually taking a stand on this issue now. So tonight I'm calling on you to address this issue and to state publicly that it is imperative that we advocate for and protect the right to abortion in our city. We have one abortion care provider in Greensboro, A Woman's Choice, and the staff there are already seeing an influx of demand from surrounding states, as far away as Missouri and Texas. Their director of operations has told me that they're preparing for the call volume to keep increasing. They are in desperate need of registered nurses and certified medical assistants, as well as support financially for transportation, childcare, and lodging for those who come here to get abortions, both in and out of state. The city council could join other city councils across the country in pledging support for reproductive care and in allocating funding to ensure everyone who needs an abortion is able to get one safely. Cities from Baltimore to Albuquerque have allocated as much as $300,000 each to local clinics. Greensboro could become a leader in this state by doing the same. Women's Choice, the clinic here, has also invited council members to come shadow clinic escorts to see what goes on there, including the protesters that clinics are forced to confront as they show up for their appointments. The clinic does not want police at the clinic, but they do want a protected quiet zone to ensure safety and minimize the hardship for patients. And Mayor Vaughn, on June 27th, you stated online in the Greater Greensboro Politics Group that you would support a resolution against 3 bills currently in the North Carolina State Legislature that seek to restrict abortion access and which are supported by representatives from Guilford County. These bills are House Bill 31, Senate Bill 404, and Senate Bill 405. A resolution against these bills would be a welcome and important step in supporting abortion access in the state. So I call on city council members to take up that resolution and to pass one protecting abortion rights within the city limits of Greensboro. We must expand reproductive health services and protect those seeking access to care. This council must codify Greensboro's position as a safe harbor for all those in need of abortion-related care, protecting against these attacks that we're seeing on reproductive health services from officials here and in other states. North Carolina, we must recognize as functionally the last state in the South that actually recognizes the bodily autonomy of women and everyone who can get pregnant. Even though abortion access is severely restricted in this state, it is still a right that North Carolinians can claim, and we must protect it, not only for the sake of people here, but for millions in surrounding states. There are a lot of issues where council has limited capacity to act, but this is not one of them. So council should pass resolutions against the anti-choice bills in the state legislature, declare Greensboro a safe haven for all reproductive care, and allocate funding to support the clinic here and ensure safe access to abortion. Thank you.
Thank you. Louis Pitts, followed by Robert Hoke, followed by Bill Marshburn.
Good evening, council members. My name is Louis Pitts. It's campaign season, oddly enough. I wish your opponents were here so we could engage in this together. I suspect all of you in your campaigning have used the words public safety and housing or affordable housing. But those can be very abstract and worse, platitudes. We all want those things. What have you done and what will you do to concretize those issues? I usually speak here about public safety issues. I just want to pass quickly on that issue. Our police department has a long pattern of decades of racist violence. We're about to select a new chief of police. To her credit, Nancy Hoffman has realized and agreed to speak with our city manager that our candidates for chief of police need to be made aware of the facts of this pattern and ask on the record, what will you do to change that culture? And no candidate from inside the police department should be given any consideration. Affordable housing, a concrete example of that is Karen Martin, a 70-year-old woman who is not wealthy, who was able to scrape up money in 2016 by a small piece of land, and soon thereafter was struck with serious health issues and still is. She's surviving on that piece of land by living in her car. She put a storage house on there and a tent. What has your bureaucracy done to her? They're hauling her before a hearing next week, alleging a zoning violation because she has a storage building and a tent with no principal dwelling. That is one of the most, that is inhumane, that's technocratic, that is an abuse of power. And surely, and they've done that despite medical evidence the doctor has written saying these proceedings are stressing her out. Don't do this to her. To her credit, Nancy Vaughn weeks ago went to see Ms. Martin, actually visited her and saw the humiliating circumstances. Yvonne Johnson has gotten involved and is going to make efforts to find a builder and find contributions. And I think both of them, what I'm asking, what are you, the rest of you, or speak to those that I've named, doing concretely, not abstractly?
Robert Hope, followed by Bill Marshburn, followed by Sidney Branch.
Mayor Vaughn, Mr. Holston, Ms. Hightower, Ms. Abuzader, Dr. Goldie Wells, Mayor Pro Tem, Ms. Johnson, Ms. Hoffman, Ms. Thorne, and Mr. Outling. We all certainly have the same emotions. Can you remember one time or more who really felt scared? Were you ever so scared with an employer that if you reached out for an answer, it may not even be returned? Did you ever feel completely shushed? I experienced this often for nearly 10 months as an employee at the Greensboro Coliseum in pursuit of both Tanger Center employment and volunteering. Adding to my confusion, an unwelcome FedEx letter arrived in October 2021 from the deputy manager of the Tanger Center. Can any of you city council members, so many of you incumbents, easily understand what that title means? My question to my manager never got answered. That letter too is so shocking because I was thereon forbidden to speak to any city of Greensboro personnel about further clarification as to why I could not volunteer. No one, not even Greensboro City Human Resources, my manager, the Coliseum Personnel Director, knew the exact answer. I had even heard earlier that because of my disability, peripheral vascular disease, that I would not be allowed to volunteer, partly because of my health situation, and that there were too many stairs to climb. Please help. That shocked me. I had never been disciplined during my employment tenure beginning of May 2019, so I wish to publicly thank Mayor Vaughn again for the opportunity to speak to the city manager of Greensboro. I would so wish that a written transcript of any meeting or meetings could be prepared. I may be requesting, if allowed, further intervention of the Greensboro City Council. It is my right and freedom to state how confused and damaged I have been within so many details that I am seeking to discuss. As for now, I have lost all appeal rights to work per the deputy manager of the Greensboro Coliseum and Tanger Center. Many questions remain, including a request for kinder intervention to me between the chief executives of these same two companies. I never had any conversation allowed to take place between these two gentlemen, nor was I allowed to speak to either of these two individuals. Must the requested desire to be treated kindly be considered wrong? All employees of the customer service team at the Greensboro Coliseum are not treated equally. Thank you.
Thank you. Bill Marshburn, followed by Sidney Branch. And was that Carrie Ann Broadway who? So Bill Marshburn, Sidney Branch, Carrie Ann Broadway.
Bill Marshburn, 4693 Long Valley Road. I just barely made it down here and I just pinned this. Last evening, I and my neighbors received a letter from a certain investment group stating they were petitioning the city for a change from agricultural to cluster housing, et cetera, et cetera. 16.5 acres in front of my house. I have not talked to all my neighbors and the matter does not appear to be on tonight's agenda. My thoughts. The land is totally plantable in baled silage for most years over the past decades. With an approaching food shortage and economic emergency, I have to use that word, it's a possibility. Why not plant it in a single harvestable crop in the spring? Or have numerous vegetable gardens where local people with farming experience, and there are a lot of them around there, other gardeners can tutor young people of many age groups in growing crops for food. City could help bus young people from inner city on weekends or more often. The city even had a vegetable garden plot a few years ago, several hundred feet from here, up there on, was it West Market or Friendly? Very close to the property, former Sheriff Barnes has a long experience in training people in gardening self-sufficiently at the county farm. I talked to the former police chief at your retreat, and he was very positive on putting children in a gardening for food environment. So I wish you and city staff would look into this option. You may not have heard about this as of yet, but there's a heads up. Thank you.
Sydney Branch, followed by Carrie Ann Broadway.
Well, hello, good evening. My name is Sydney Branch and I live in right here in Greensboro. Oh, yeah. That's what happened. I got stuff in there. All right. Seems like everybody knows where I live and everybody wants to buy my house. How come they know my name? How come they know my address? Who's selling my information? A lot of people. When I first came here, been here almost 6 years now. When I first came here, my house was in disrepair. I had to come in here every I don't know how often it is. To explain what I was doing in my own house, why I wasn't fixing a little outlet or a door thing. Well, I noticed that the house up there at Blueford and Dudley is finally getting torn down. It's been there since 6 years now, since I've been here. I wanted to buy it. It's kind of a nice house. It's total disrepair, but it's taking you all this time to get around to that person. And then thank goodness for my wife, she noticed that y'all reassessed the value of the house. Zillow's, it's way high. Somebody said, oh, you made a real good buy, Mr. Branch. I guess I did. So then I was at another meeting. Ma'am, I asked her, well, how come we don't have no grocery store over there? Again, Elizabeth MapQuested it, good 4 miles to get to a selection of food and wine. I drink a little wine. So it's okay. The guy on the Supreme Court, he likes beer, so it's okay. I can say it. So I'm glad everybody else talked about the shed, my neighbor. And then the reason we don't have a grocery store is there's not enough money on the east side. Okay. And y'all is gonna build a great big building out there. I actually went up there because I took a drive up Yanceyville or whatever. I saw that big Publix building. Where are all them people gonna live? Where are they gonna buy food at? I think that lady asked the question too. So y'all want some bond money. I didn't see nothing for the senior homeowner that needs to fix up. I think somebody mentioned seniors. I'm a senior. A lot of people have plumbing issues. I haven't been here for a while. This paper here, y'all is looking for another chief already. What happened? What happened there? I don't know. I was there. I went to that meeting in 2019, stressed some of those things that people saying. They killed Mr. Smith on my birthday. That was the other time I was here because I totally blew my birthday out. So I don't, oh, damn it. And this is what happened last time.
Thank you.
I talked, And this is the main problem.
Thank you. Your time
that
is
I
up.
came here for, oh golly. I'll try again next time.
Carrie Ann Broadway, followed by Malik, no last name, and Trayvon Worth.
Hello, my name is Carrie Ann Broadway. I'm a member of a local coalition working towards reproductive justice, and I'm a clinic escort in the clinic in Greensboro. Since we know that abortion is healthcare and that access in North Carolina must be protected, advanced, and sanctified, we have some demands that are in line with these goals. Our first demands are that the funding be apportioned specifically for abortion care. This funding should be diverted from those provided to crisis pregnancy clinics, which do not provide health care. These clinics instead provide religious counseling and misinformation about abortion. We also want to invite the city councilors to shadow a clinic escort shift so that they can witness the sheer number and audacity of people who try to interrupt people who are trying to access health care. We want to be clear, however, this is not an invitation to station law enforcement at or near the clinic. Police do not make patients feel safer. We demand that City Council pass a resolution designating Greensboro as a safe harbor for abortion care. There is currently only one clinic in Guilford County that provides abortion care. This clinic serves people from outside of our county and state, and it will be increasingly harder to provide health care for people without those protections in place. Thank you.
So our last two in-person speakers are Malik and Trayvon Worth.
Hello, City Council members. Nancy Vaughn, out loud, you know me because you met me on 4th of July out there. I wanted to come out and speak because of two concerns. And number one, next week, y'all know that July 27th is coming up for me because I got beat up in downtown Greensboro. I am trying to stop the gun violence, and I'm standing up with my people back here in the back that knows who I am. And I wanted to say that on their behalf, that I am stopping the gun violence and I'm standing to initiate, take it as curative violence for Greensboro and Guilford County. And number two, my number two concern is the GTA and the operators, how they be so disrespectful to customers. And I want to get the city to go behind me and city council to vote on it, to have me go in as y'all secret person to be on the city council, to be out there, to see what's going on with these customers and how they talk to the drivers and how they be trying to treat these drivers. Because I done seen a lot. I done rode all the buses, I know all my routes, and I'm trying to stand. Number two, the IRC, LaVon Johnson, I know you on top of this with me, but I would love for both of y'all to stand behind me, Nancy Vaughn, because the IRC, we want to take the IRC back. We want the IRC. We want to make changes. We want to see some staff members be taken off the IRC, and the city family, our people that could stand up, they're standing in the back, right back there. We want y'all to know we taking the IRC back and we want to make changes. We want to make the IRC positive because we do not want to sleep outside this winter. We want the white flag to be at the IRC. And we want to keep the IRC in a different way. We want to try to run that IRC because the staff that's up there at the IRC are not treating us like we should be treated. They're not giving us items that they have in their storage room, and they are not trying to give us a lot of things. They have been closing the doors behind, and they have been turning a lot of people away. I do not like that. So I'm standing up here with my people to let them know that we are trying to change the IRC, and we want the IRC turned. So I'm asking y'all to vote for us to take over and have us run the IRC. And that's for you, Nancy Vaughn, to think about if you want to think about it, because I really appreciate it. Nancy Vaughn, I want you to, hopefully you'll win this election, and I want you to be back in that seat, that same seat that you're sitting in today. And I want everybody to know, because I'm tired and I'm trying to stand for my city, and I want to be in your seat one day. I want to be in your footsteps because you have been there for us. And now Mr. Outlaw, you two, I really like to how both of y'all went time.
Thank you. We do have two other speakers signed up. Trayvon Worth, followed by Dominic LeGrand, followed by Roy Monette.
Hello, how you doing? I'm Trayvon Worth, citizen of Gibsonville, North Carolina, which is Guilford County. I just wanted to bring a couple things over everyone's head, just not go over your head, just to give you a little understanding. So today will be the day to break the silence. Homelessness has become overwhelming in our city. Our only question is why. Resources have become minimal. I realize there's only one resource center, which is becoming resourceless. As you may know, as the IRC, housing is a human right. It's a mural on the back. If housing is a human right, and my address is on my ID that's in my pocket right now, it's 407 East Washington, then why am I being pushed out of these doors because the staff have COVID, fevers, or whatever the case may be? It doesn't supposed to be transmittable. So at this point, I'm feeling like the Interactive Resource Center, which is not stated a safe place, which is the urban ministry is a safe place. The depot is a safe place. I've been in the streets of Greensboro for over 10 years. And it's became to a point where if I'm sleeping in the parking lot because they don't want to open up these doors online on the news, every time we see it on the news, it's a homeless shelter. But all it is the day center. Nobody's living there. You gave out over $60,000 for these people to stay in rooms, but the people that's living in the parking lot, you're giving no help to them. It's 95 degrees outside. You bring 1,000 hot waters to the front door. I took an initiative to go get my permit at the front of this building. Trayvon Worth, Mr. Active Snacks and Things, nationally known, led marches for Andrew Young, Andrew Brown, and I work with Dr. Brother Gregory Drumright in Burlington, North Carolina, Graham, North Carolina, Statue of Confederacy. I'm saying that to say this. We're stepping towards greatness. When we're stepping towards greatness, anything that's in our way, we have to handle it. Right now, homelessness is at an all-time high in Greensboro. Why are people coming into the Interactive Resource Center where I'm supposed to live, where I'm homeless, where I'm standing in the parking lot? Last night, I could have been ducking and dodging bullets. It's no fence up like it is at the urban ministry. It's a white-collar crime, Bernie Madoff. These people are taking my social security number and using it and not helping me. Help me, help us. I've done it several times. These are my comrades that are out here with me late night, waiting for somebody to pull up and feed us. Because maybe we didn't sell no ice cold water today because we couldn't afford ice. Maybe they didn't give us the food that was in the storage building. Let's keep it going. All right. We've been neglected by these nonprofit organizations. They've hired staff. All right. I appreciate your time.
Thank you. Dominic LeGrand, followed by Roy Monette.
Hello, how's everyone doing today? I'm using my voice today. I'm recently released from prison.
Could you just state your name for the record?
I'm Dominic LeGrand L.
Thank you.
I'm a Moorish American citizen, and I'm trying to reconstruct my life. And I have to do this on my own because there really is virtually no help coming out of the system. I came out of the system newly mental health status and a whole lot of issues. I came out, the only thing they told me to do is make sure you contact your probation officer and give us an address. And like the brother was saying before me, most of the time, the address is gonna be the IRC, but we got these people that's not really active or who don't sympathize or actually been in a position to feel or understand what we're going through. So I'm here today because I lead by example. I'm LBE. That's why I have tatted right here. This is a prison tat, everyone. Yes, I've done 10 years from 17 to 27, my first time Why? Because people didn't want to hear my story. I got out, I got myself together. I got caught with just a gun. That's it. They try to give me 15 years. Why? Because these laws and things don't look at the person as an individual. They're looking at this one person as everybody back on that wall. So we trying to turn this picture around as everybody back on that wall is this one person. We all got the same problems. I stopped what I was doing today. I didn't go to my real job because you know what I wanted to do? I wanted to go down to the park where the homeless people are, and I gave out free haircuts today. Yesterday. That's what I'm doing. I'm becoming active because I want to lead by example. I want to show this council, I want to show this bar that a regular person can get out there and use their time and actually do something to lift a person's spirits first and foremost. Because mental health awareness and prison reform is what I stand for. Because a lot of these people out there that I'm cutting hair have mental health issues that is going untreated. And when they can't have somewhere to sleep at night, this putting pressure on the mental. These things I've studied for myself. So when we don't have a place to stay, that put pressure on the person that has kids because that kid don't have nowhere to stay. And if I can't feed myself or my kids, what do I think I need to do? The wrong thing. But we should be able to come down here and say, hey, I don't have a home. I'm mental health. I'm supposed to get a check, something they were supposed to do as soon as I came out. Hey, you mental health, you newly status, let's get you some help. That's what I'm here today. I got my friend right here, Roy. He's the next speaker.
Thank you.
He lead by example too.
Thank you. Mr. Monette, I believe, is the last in-person speaker that we have. If I've missed anybody, please let the courier know.
Well, I came out, but it was like a late notice, but I came.
I'm sorry, could you say your name for the
Roy
record?
Monet.
Thank you.
Well, anyway, my time in Greensboro, I noticed they can make a change, but they're not making the change they need to make. I guess people getting funded, the money is not making it to where it needs to go. I noticed how in a park, you have all these homeless people laying around that can't have shelter, but the shelter's not even working. A lot of people in poverty because landlords not want to rent these days. They'd rather sell their houses. So that bags up more people. And you making more people homeless that ain't never been homeless, never been in a position to be homeless because they can't get the place they need. So then they become homeless too. And I would like to talk about the police. Me, I go around helping people all day. Me and the guy, Dominique, we doing free haircuts. We helping everybody we can. We do a lot of nonprofit help. And when the police see me, it look like I did something. Oh, this is a guy with a gun. This is a guy that did this. And it's like, what can I do that you get treated equal? I don't know. We need to work on things like that. And we need to work on housing. Get the landlord to rent. They trying to sell everything. Don't nobody want to rent, no matter how much money you got. They don't want to fall in the slum or fall back. So I guess we should try to create some type of organization or some type of field, at least have tenants for the ones that got to sleep in the park. You don't want them in the park, then help them out the park. You don't want them on the ground, help them off the ground. What is we funding other people for? I don't see where the money going. You ask me. And some of the churches feeding, yeah, that's cool, but that's a good job. But what about after that, when they have to lay on the ground? You don't want him to beg for no money, help them out. But it doesn't seem like it never changed. It seems like getting worse and worse. More people getting out, more young people getting out on the streets with kids. And it's just going in straight poverty. We need to make a change. We need to have more police officers to try to react with more people. Try to let them know, hey, we ain't against you, we with you. But the trust is getting lost because the way they getting treated. So when they see something, they don't want to call the police because they scared. They call the police gonna ask them what's their name, search them up, and all that without doing the job that they came for. And basically, that's all I got to say right now. Next time, hopefully I have more stuff to say and be prepared. And I'm LBE, lead by example.
Thank you. I believe we have one speaker on Zoom. Kevin Fremengia.
Yes, hello. My name is Allende Simon. I'm on here behalf of my co-founder, Kevin Femingia. He couldn't make it. Am I allowed to share my screen?
Excuse me?
Am I allowed to share my screen for my presentation?
Yes,
Okay, great. Make this.
and you have 3 minutes.
All right, thank you. I'm here to talk about the 2022 HBCU Smart Cities Challenge. I'm here on behalf of Pathway OZ. Pathway OZ is an opportunity zone investment firm focused on HBCU communities and investment. We build economic ecosystem in HBCU communities. We work to utilize opportunity zones that empower entrepreneurs, businesses, and startups. We're here today to discuss Greensboro and hopefully their involvement and participation in the HBCU Smart Cities Challenge. What that is encouraging HBCUs to build a smart city application for their community. This takes place by encouraging developers, entrepreneurs, designers, and engineers to develop tech solutions that leverage ICT and IoT technology. Students enrolled at HBCUs are eligible to participate. Each smart city team will need to be made of HBCU students, present a functional MVP that solves a problem for a city or community, and complete a pitch deck and visual presentation for a team of judges by December 17th. This will be kicking off this September. Just to give a short outlook on our time frame. We're kicking off with virtual events and smart city and IoT introduction workshops for our HBCU partners. In October, we'll be finalizing teams. November, they'll be finalizing MVPs. December, they'll be submitting a pitch and visual presentation. And our finale event happens February 2023, which we hope to take place in Greensboro. And how we're looking to evaluate the applications that take part in this HBCU challenge. It's based on innovation, social impact, solution, business model, and market opportunity. And this gets to how Greensboro could be involved and how we see Greensboro being involved and how other cities have been involved so far. City representatives can submit at least 2 problems that their city is experiencing, along with resources available for HBCU teams to utilize during our challenge. This can include problems like walkability, making Greensboro more transit-oriented, remaking the user experience of 311, endless possibilities. The second thing we need from our city is each city will have a designated point of contact for our team to communicate with. This could be heads of departments. Usually city planning is excited about projects like these, assistant city managers. Third, we're asking city officials in cities that do come on board to attend smart city town halls that we'll be having with our sponsors who will be involved. And for our challenge as of now, we're looking to include anywhere from 150 to 200 students. We've already been in contact with North Carolina A&T's Community Engagement Officer, Alani Cockerman. We have support from East Greensboro now, Vice President Phil Barnhill has led us support. So far, HBCUs involved, we have Stillman College, Morgan State, Tuskegee University, Barber Scotia, and Cottrell College. And we're looking to bring in Greensboro as an official partner. Would love to connect with anyone who is interested, maybe city planning, to get 2 questions or 2 problems submitted to our challenge.
Thank you for your presentation, but your time has expired.
Well, Nancy,
Okay.
can you finish the presentation? Do you have any more to say, young man?
That was it. I just really wanted to make sure I connected with the right folks in city and council to move this project forward for Greensboro to get involved.
Okay. We'll be reaching out. Thank you.
Madam Mayor, I can
Yes.
reach out to the speaker and ask him to share that presentation with me so that I can forward it to council.
You said to ask him to share it with you?
I can reach
So-
out to
so
them
they-
to
Okay,
have
if
them.
you would, thank you.
I would like to have.
So those are the speakers from the floor and the virtual speakers that we have. We will now move on to our consent agenda,
Move the item.
and that is items G1 through G31. Motion by Mr. Holston, seconded by Ms. Abuzawader. Council, please vote. Mrs. Hoffman? Mr. Holston?
Yes.
Dr. Wells? Mayor Pro
Yes.
Tem? I am a yes. Ms. Abuzawader? Mr. Outling?
Yes.
Mrs. Thurm?
Yes.
And Mrs. Hightower?
Yes.
And that passes 9-0.
Madam Mayor,
Oh, yes, sorry.
I'd like to ask, I would like for us to table the decision we made about the garbage can fees. And I've gotten God knows how many calls from people who are seniors who work in emergency rooms 12 hours. I want us to talk about some other options. Is it legal? Is that correct for me to do that? Can I do that?
I thought we already delayed it for 4
But
months.
you can bring something
could speak
up in a
with-
certain period of time after you've made the decision. Is that correct?
It is. I'm not sure how many,
Was the last meeting we were?
was that passed as part of the budget? So then at that point, then Mrs. Johnson would have the opportunity to revisit that.
Yes.
I'd like for us to revisit it and talk about other ways perhaps that we can have the same results. I mean, nobody wants to see garbage cans out long due after they are to be put up. But we also need to encourage neighbors to be neighbors to those senior citizens, to those who are working in emergency rooms 12 hours. And I've heard from these people. So I would like to make that motion.
So would you like to take that up at a later date,
I
put it on
would.
another agenda?
I would.
And that is, so it is the ability, I guess, would be to allow Mrs. Johnson to revisit her support of the last item.
For all of us to look at it and see if there are ways we can come up with, other than fines. People are hurting, and as we all know. If we can, that would be great.
So does that require a vote to allow her to revisit?
I think I don't think it requires a vote. Unless you wanted to indicate to the manager your intention or something like that, but presumably she has a right to call for something to be reconsidered if she was voting in a majority of, I think,
Okay.
it's within a month.
That
So
is correct.
I think she threw me
Okay.
off initially talking about tabling something. I don't think there's anything on the table.
Well,
To
bring it
table.
back up, whatever.
I got you.
Thank you. And the second thing is, September is Hunger Action Month. And I'd like to ask all businesses, maybe this building to use orange lights on the outside for as many buildings, businesses, et cetera, restaurants as possible, to do that, to celebrate Hunger Action Month. My agency runs 3 food pantries, and I know we were feeding when we started a few hundred. Now we're over 3,000 per pantry. So I'd just like to say that, and then we'll do a resolution, Mr. Manager and Mr. Attorney, for September for the Hungry Action Month. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Madam Mayor.
Sure. Now we are moving on to the public hearing portion of our agenda. Item H1 is a public hearing for a resolution authorizing an economic development incentive to IQE Inc. Mr. City Manager or Mr. Yandel?
That's it.
Thank you. Good evening. This is a public hearing for IQE's Economic Development Incentive Request. IQE Incorporated is a semiconductor company which manufactures wafers for a wide range of technology applications. The company is considering 949 Gallimore Dairy Road for their consolidation. Can you hear me? It says on there here. Sorry. Okay, sorry. This is IQE Incorporated is a semiconductor company here in Greensboro, which manufactures wafers for a wide range of technology applications. The company is considering 949 Gallimore Dairy Road for their consolidation and expansion. This facility would accommodate machinery from other locations and new equipment. The expansion would result in capital investment of over $7 million and 31 new jobs over a 5-year period. The average wage of those jobs is $65,968, and none of those jobs would pay below $15 an hour. The company is requesting an incentive in the amount of $37,755. This slide demonstrates that they meet the basic incentive guidelines created with over 25 jobs, the average over the Gilbert County average wage, and over $7 million of investment. Staff recommends that City Council consider this request to authorize these incentives. You'll note in the attached resolution that the grant would be paid over a 5-year period. The 31 new jobs above the existing employment level will be retained through that end of the installment period. The construction portion of this project will adhere to the city's MWBE program plan. Representatives from the company have already spoken to staff about what will be expected. The new jobs will be posted with our Workforce Development Board and be required to host a job fair during their hiring phases. Here with us tonight is Mr. Price and Mr. Christensen from the Greensboro Chamber, as well as Mr. Chris Santana from the company, if you have any questions.
Any questions?
So I have a question.
Mrs. Hightower?
Something has recently come to my attention about incentives, and I'm somewhat upset about it. So, and by the way, I'll be asking for a work session. But I just want clarification. Because what we do is we say average job and we throw a good number out. But what is the lowest paying job? And what is the assurance that that lowest paying job will not be below 15? Because what I'm being told is jobs that are incentivized may be 15. Jobs that are not
No
are
job
not
will be.
factored into this. And for me, when I approve an incentive, I approve it for the whole project. I don't approve a piece of it or incentive here. If the lowest job should be no less than 15.
That's correct. No, the jobs will be below $15 an hour of the jobs here, of the 31 new jobs.
I don't want a hiring job fair to come about and then jobs get posted and I see less than 15. And that, so what is my insurance now? Because I'm not sure if I trust the whole process.
Well, when we do compliance on economic development incentives, the company has to report to the Department of Labor information about the number of employees and wages. And that's some of the documents that we use to verify that information, that all the jobs that we're incentivizing are above $15 an hour.
Because even 15 is fine. It's not even a living wage, but at least it's a start. It's what the city pays. But if we are providing incentives, then we need a return on investment.
Yes, ma'am.
And to make sure that our citizens can make a decent wage. I just want to be ensured that not 6 months from now, we say, well, yeah, you had an incentive, but it only factored on these jobs. All these jobs outside of the incentive don't count toward that 50. Mr. City Attorney, he's staring at me. So I want, that's the conversation you and I been.
I'm only trying to make sure I see you and hear you. This glass is kind of, the glass is kind of reflective, that's all.
Okay.
I mean, what you talked about is a process that has kind of changed over time. I think at one point, it was an average, not minimum. then we move to minimum, no lower than 15. And at that time, the understanding, I believe, was that you could have other employees that weren't part of the incentive, and they may be less than 15, but that we would only provide the incentive on a job-by-job basis above the 15. But I mean, your policy orientation toward it is viable, and if the council agrees to it, that's what it can be.
Is it in the policy though?
I don't think it's
That's
in the
why
policy. I don't think currently that's our policy or your policy.
Because that is my, well, right,
It-
because I
well,
pushed for it.
In the guidelines that you all amended, it is in there that no jobs would be, of incentivized jobs would be below $15 an hour.
See, there's
No,
that
but
word
that's
again.
that's the concern. She's
There's
concerned
that word
because-
again.
Yeah.
Mm-mm. No.
And that was the policy though. So I mean, I think what you're raising is an issue that you as council members can consider and take a position on. But I think the staff understood the position to be that jobs that weren't receiving a incentive, and this is where the incentive was based on jobs per job. And jobs that didn't get $15 an hour would get no incentive. So if, that is what it is, but it doesn't have to be that way.
But to me, I'm giving the incentive to the entire project. I'm not giving an incentive to a piece here and say, okay, this piece is carved out, incentivized here. Because if that's the case, then the jobs outside the incentive can be $8, $7, $6.
That's exactly correct.
And I can't support that, ever.
I hear you.
So I understand your concern. Dr. Wells has a question or a comment, followed by Mr. Holston, followed by Mrs. Thurm.
No, I'd like for you to go back to the slide, the one before this one.
That one?
All right, so this says, what does IQE stand for?
IQE is the name of the company, IQE
Oh,
Incorporated.
the name.
I don't remember what the acronym actually
It
means.
says here that there will be 31 new jobs,
Correct.
but 25 of them are what we incentivize.
No, ma'am. So the column on the far right there is our minimum to qualify for incentives. And so you'll see there that the minimum to qualify for new incentives is you have to meet two of the three qualifications. A minimum of 25 new jobs. Meet the average wage needs to be at or above the Guilford County average wage, and the minimum investment amount is $7 million. So that's what I was just demonstrating there, that it met those base minimum requirements.
Those 25.
Yeah, it's their project is 31, at least 31 jobs, and the minimum is 25.
Oh.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Mr. Yandel, yes, just for my personal background. So IQE has how many jobs already outside of these 31?
IQE currently employs 50.
50. So it's 50 plus we're adding 31.
Correct.
And the current incentive guideline has to be at least 25 jobs to be incentivized. And our current policy, Mr. City Attorney, is that we have been incentivizing incremental jobs, not necessarily going back to the jobs entirely. So it is possible, I think, as Councilwoman Hightower said, that we could see an advertisement for a job at hypothetically $8 an hour, but it's not one of the incentivized jobs.
Correct.
And if we wanted to claw back and look at all of their jobs, that's a whole different discussion. Is that correct? We're looking at the company as a whole, that we have to look back and do something else or say something else, document something else, memorialize something else so that it's covered. But as of right now, it's just the jobs, the new jobs, the incremental jobs that are being added.
Correct. We're incentivizing the new jobs and the new investment.
Okay, thank you.
And you said every one of those 31 jobs is at $15 an hour or more.
Yes.
Yes. Okay. Mrs. Thurm?
Thank you. I think you've already answered my question that every job is over the $15 an hour. So the questions about the policy are really separate questions about the policy, not about the item that's before us today.
Correct. Yep. All the jobs will be over $15 an hour.
Thank you.
If I may, they're not separate issues. They're one issue because the policy needs to relate to what we are voting on and approving and incentivizing. So yes, it does. The policy absolutely does count because it's what I support. It also is when I speak that what we're doing, people hear that. And so it looks like we're telling people you have opportunity at 15. However, if the jobs aren't incentivized, then they pop up as 8, 9, 10. And to me, what you say to the public matters because that's what people hear. They don't hear incentivized jobs. They don't hear, they hear, I have an opportunity at 15. And that's important to me. I appreciate you bringing the jobs. We've discussed this and we've talked about it. So I think it's fine. It's critically important. We continue to do so. However, we just need to be transparent about what we're doing. And that does speak to making sure the policy is accurate. Thank you. Thank you, Marcia.
What's the average salary of these jobs, please?
The average wage is $65,968.
That's what I thought. So we're not talking about $15 an hour jobs.
The average wage of a job is factored in with administrative jobs as well. So you say average wage to people, people are not going to go apply and everybody in these jobs get a job for $65,000. Thus, the reason I always ask, what is the lowest paying job? Because that is the important factor that needs to be
Before
discussed.
before the
Right.
policy change, it was the average number of jobs over the whole thing. So since the amendment to the guidelines,
Yeah.
all the jobs that we would incentivize is over $15. Before that, that wasn't the case. We took the average overall, but we wouldn't include that.
And that's what people get caught up in. And that's the reason for the question I asked to be specific to the point
Sure.
of getting to the lowest paid job.
Yep.
Because people say, oh, you brought 50 jobs, 100 jobs, they pay $70,000. Okay. And then they go apply and they go, I don't get one of them. So we have to make sure we spell it out clear.
Sure.
So
So
I
thank you, Marsha.
Sharon, and I appreciate what you're saying, and I think there is validity to that. But the project before us has stated that all 31 jobs will be $15 an hour or more. Is there a motion or a question? Moved by Mrs. Thurm, seconded by Mrs. Hoffman. Council, please vote. Mrs. Hoffman? Mr. Holston?
Yes.
Dr. Wells? Mayor Pro Tem, I am a yes. Mr. Buzawader?
Yes.
Mr. Outling?
Yes.
Mrs. Thurm?
Yes.
And Mrs. Hightower?
And so, well, let me be clear. While I support the project, I want to make sure that it does exactly what people are expecting it to do, which is to pay them a decent salary, beginning with 15 an hour. Gas is $6. So people need to ensure that they are going to have opportunity. And so this conversation is valid. It's what they expect us to do up here.
I agree.
Thank you. Thank you, Marsha. Thank you.
So Mrs. Hightower, that is a yes,
Yeah, yes.
and that passes 9-0. And I want to thank the company for expanding your operations here in the city of Greensboro. We appreciate it very much. Thank you. Item number H2 is a public hearing for a resolution authorizing an agreement with Downtown Greensboro, Inc. for sidewalk dining beautification and accessibility in an estimated amount of up to $142,600. And item H3, an ordinance amending fiscal year 2022-23 general fund budget for a grant for sidewalk beautification and accessibility in the amount estimated up to $142,600. Mr. Matheny is on the phone for questions. I will not be voting on this since I sit on the board of Downtown Greensboro.
Move the item.
Second.
Move the item.
So it was moved by Mayor Pro Tem, seconded by Ms. Abuzawader.
So can somebody explain what this is to me?
I'd be happy to.
Well,
Or Zach is on the phone.
Mr. City Manager?
Yes, I will defer to Assistant City Manager Trey Davis and then maybe Assistant City Manager Davis too.
So there are two parts. I'll talk to the first part, and my partner Larry will talk to the dollars impact. But ultimately, this will allow us to assist and help those businesses that are downtown put into place the ordinance that we passed, that you all actually passed, the city outdoor dining ordinance several months ago.
Mrs. Boothwaider?
Yeah, I just wanted to say that it's going to also help them with ADA compliance. It will increase sales tax revenue from businesses downtown, a whole lot of factors that, you know, this certainly will help the small businesses. And having been a small business person and a restaurant owner, I can tell you, this is something that I really like to see. So thank you.
I agree wholeheartedly. Small business development, economic development, it's a continuation of building that vibe for our downtown community, our downtown environment. I love it.
You know, it allows these businesses to increase their revenue, to increase the, we'll have additional sales tax from
So is it
this,
only for businesses on Elm Street? Because I hadn't finished Mary Kay, but when I asked for the question.
Years ago, I went to Savannah, Georgia.
Yvonne, the question I asked was, is
I'm
it for the businesses on, well, I had asked the first question to explain, and then it got kind of taken away from me.
I'm
So
sorry. Please
are the,
forgive
it's okay. Are the businesses located along Elm Street only, or will it be for those
Councilwoman,
that may be somewhere in close proximity?
I can address that. So ultimately, when we pass the ordinance to allow the outdoor dining, it does cover the whole city. So ultimately, if a business is anywhere in the city, then, and it qualifies for this particular extension of premises, then it can be used. Obviously, quite naturally, the way the infrastructure of our roadway is, most of the businesses that will apply would be in that area. But if a business is anywhere in the city and can utilize this option, then yes, they are eligible.
Okay, that helps me. Thank you.
Mrs. Boothwaider?
Mayor Pro Tem, you had first?
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, you did.
Yeah,
I was just going to share this. Early on in my council years, I went to Savannah, Georgia, and they had just renovated downtown. And one of the key things they did was just this. They had restaurants, facilities where you ate out. And I brought that back to Greensboro. We later did that in Greensboro, but it really is, it attracts people, and it helped make their downtown. It was one of the elements that helped make their downtown really great. So I just wanted to share that much.
So, Mrs. Boothwaider, Mr. Holston, Mrs. Thurm, Dr. Wells, you too?
Just wanted to clarify and ask, I'm pretty sure I understand that DGI is putting in a large portion of money, something around 300,000.
Yes, that's correct.
Great, thank you. I think that's great.
Mr. Holston?
I was going to say, in addition to Mayor Pro Tem Johnson's statement, this also plays in hand in glove with the whole social district. It just is a continuation of that. I think it's very positive. And I just wanted to say that we talked about the social district in the past. I'd like to have a future conversation about including Center City Park in that social district as a formal part of the district or a future date.
Okay. Mrs. Thurm?
Yes, excuse me. Just as a clarification, I'm a little confused about DGI putting in $300,000, which is great. But but the program's open to all folks from all over the city. So I don't know whether Mr. Matheny can help answer that question, or exactly how does this work? My initial understanding was this is focused on downtown. And quite frankly, as with a focus all over the city, I'm a little bit more likely to support this, but I want to understand how those two marry together.
I can't comment since I am on the board. So if somebody,
Clarify that. I assume that DGI will only support downtown businesses.
I think it's a partnership where the board has given part and they want us to contribute to it.
Hold on,
So-
Mr. Davis, can somebody answer Mrs. Thurm's question?
Either Mr. Davis or
Mr.
Zach, if you
Matheny.
can chime in if you're on the line.
He is, and certainly if he would like to speak. Mr. Davis, can you answer?
And I was waiting on Zach. I didn't want to interrupt him if he was getting started, but I'll go ahead and jump in now. Since the funds are from both locations, the DGI funds can be used for particular areas related to the bid. And then our contribution is available for citywide support.
Got it. Thank you for clarifying. That's helpful
Mr. Ma-
information.
Mr. Matheny?
Call the question.
Okay, Mrs. Hoffman had a,
Just a quick comment I had said earlier, but we, with the Tanger Center and all of the other activities downtown, we need more restaurant seats. And so this will provide really an extension of premises. And, I think it's really a business boon, certainly for downtown. And if there are restaurants that want to use it in other areas of the city, that's terrific too. So.
Mr. Outling?
I'm definitely supportive of the item for all the reasons others have stated. Do want to flag, however, that hopefully DGI will work with staff to develop the criteria for determining which businesses receive money. DGI is obviously a fiduciary of the property owners within the bid. And if you have other non-bid property owners that are applying for funds, it probably makes sense to have some criteria and guidelines so everyone has confidence in the process. But that can certainly be done after the item is approved tonight, but do want to kind of flag that potential issue just to make sure people maintain the confidence that they should appropriately have in this.
So we do have a motion and a second. It was moved by Mrs. Johnson, seconded by Ms. Abuzawader on item H2. Council, please vote. Mrs. Hoffman? Mr. Holston?
Yes.
Dr. Wells? Mayor Pro Tem?
Absolutely.
Ms. Abuzawader?
Yes.
Mr. Outling?
Yes.
Mrs. Thurm? And Mrs. Hightower?
Yes.
That passes 8-0. Item number H3, a motion. Was that a motion?
Second.
I need a
Move the
motion.
item.
Moved by Mr. Holston, seconded by Mrs. Hoffman. Council, please vote. Mrs. Hoffman? Mr. Holston?
Yes.
Dr. Wells? Mrs. Johnson? Ms. Abuzawader?
Yes.
Mr. Outling?
Yes.
Mrs. Thurm?
Yes.
And Mrs. Hightower?
Yes.
And that passes 8-0. We'll now move on to items H4 and H5. Item H4 is a public hearing for an ordinance annexing territory into the corporate limits for property located at 682 Knox Road, 3.781 acres, Kaya O'Neill Clay. And item number H5, a public hearing for an ordinance for original zoning for 682 Knox Road, Kaya O. Clay. Mr. Kirkman?
Yes, thank you, Mayor Vaughn. The request is to bring the property into the city through annexation and establish original zoning from the current county RS 40 MH to city CDR3 residential single family. North of this request is currently zoned county RS 40 MH. East and south is zoned county AG agricultural and county CZ PDM conditional zoning plan development mixed. West request is zoned county agricultural. The subject property is currently undeveloped at this time. North and west of the request are single-family dwellings. East and south of the request are a combination of undeveloped land and a single-family dwelling. The future land use map of the comprehensive plan designates this site for residential development and it is designated as urban general on the future built form map of the comprehensive plan. There is one condition that is associated with this request that limits the uses to no more than 3 residential dwelling units. This original zoning request does sort of support the comprehensive plan's creating great places goal to expand Greensboro's citywide network of neat neighborhoods, offering residents of all walks of life a variety of quality housing choices, and the building community connections goal to maintain stable, attractive, and healthy places to live and raise families. The proposed CDR3 district is focused on low-density, single-family detached residential development that is compatible with the existing uses on adjacent tracts. Staff is recommending approval of the requests. The Planning and Zoning Commission heard both the annexation and original zoning request at their June 23rd meeting and unanimously voted to recommend both the annexation and original zoning. At that meeting, there was one speaker in favor of the application and two speakers in opposition. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Move H4.
Well, we do have two speakers, I believe, on Zoom. Madam Clerk, are they both in favor of the item?
Mr. Smith indicated that he had mixed support for this item.
I'm not sure what mixed support means. Does that mean that he's conflicted?
He was in favor, if I recall his interest form that he submitted, he was in favor of the annexation,
Okay, so
but not
we'll-
necessarily the zoning.
We'll hear from the applicant first, and then if Mr. Smith would like to comment, he's welcome to. Ms. Clay?
Hi, I'm Kaya. I am asking that the land be annexed so that I can use the city's water and sewer. I understand that I would have to pay if I would like to use it to get the pipes from my house to the sewer line and the water line. I'm aware of those things. I just need it so that I can use the water and sewer without having to get a septic tank since the pipes do run through my land.
Are there any questions for Ms. Clay?
So basically, you're just bringing your house into the city to get water. You're not doing anything else.
No, ma'am.
Yeah.
I'm building my own house. That's all I'm doing. I just want to make sure that I can use the water and sewer that's already there instead of having to get a septic tank and possibly being told that I can't have the house of my dreams because I don't have enough. The perk test wouldn't perk for the right thing.
Okay, oh, gotcha. Okay. Well, hopefully you can get the home of your dreams.
So this is an annexation and then just original zoning.
Yeah.
Mr. Smith?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay.
And we have you as opposition.
Well, I don't have a problem. She had it wrong. I don't have a problem with the rezoning for her to build a dwelling there. My concern is that annexation into the city. There's nothing adjoining her property of the city of Greensboro. And my concern was that she's wanted to hook into a sewage, which I was understood and told by the contractors when it went in that that was for drainage only, and that they would have to go back and put another line in or put a line into that line to run sewage into. Since it does cross my property and I do own that back side of it, that could impact my property and possibly have an issue with contamination.
Is there anyone who can speak to Mr. Smith's concerns?
Mike, can you speak to that? Mike?
Good evening, Madam Mayor, members of council. Mike Borchers, Greensboro Water Resources Director. Utility services are available to this site. The water is available at Knox Road, and to the south of the site is sewer, which has adequate capacity to provide service for this customer. So we, as far as water resources is concerned, have no concerns as far as being able to connect on. She is correct that she would be responsible for the costs to connect on, but as far as our system and our capacity, we're able to handle it.
So it wouldn't affect Mr. Smith's, wouldn't affect his land as he is afraid of or concerned about?
she would have to get an easement to be able to go across the site to connect to the sewer to the south. So that would be the one item that she would have to work with the neighbor to be able to access our sewer.
But there wouldn't be contamination.
No.
Okay, that,
We
I
would,
think that
yeah,
was
we
the
would make
question.
sure the inspection and construction meets our requirements.
Thank you.
Mr. Smith, does that address your concern?
Well, like I said, I was of the understanding when the city purchased the access to it. But since then, we have had bad sewage odors coming up from that venting down on that line, which I was not aware that we were going to have. My concern at this point, if we're getting odors, sewage odors coming up from that line coming through there, that once we actually start running sewage, it will only get worse. And that's my concern.
So Mike, if there's a septic, is there a septic system already on this property? Do you know? Because don't they cap it off?
Yeah, that I do not know, but you are correct. If she connects to city sewer, we would not allow her to use a septic system. And as
Right.
far as odors, we certainly can investigate. Sometimes it's related to an obstruction in the line. Sometimes it's just related to age. Of course, the older the sewer that's in the line, the more it can have an odor to it. So I have taken a note. I will ask staff to go ahead and look at it and to make sure that we don't have any obstructions or any problems with our collection system in the area.
Yeah, because I don't want to prohibit her from being able to get water to her site and sewer. Mr. Smith, can you work with our water department to better fully understand that you won't have any impact? And are you, and do I understand you've got to grant her an easement for that, Mike? He has to do that, correct?
Correct.
So I think,
No, she has the easement on her property already. I think she's planning on hooking into it on her property.
What
my
is an
understanding. But I'm downstream from that, so everything that flows in from her site is going to come into my direction.
Mr.
Mike, can you speak to that? I don't think we've ever had a problem like this in the past.
Yeah, we can certainly, what I'm going to do is I will take a look to make sure where the sewer is in proximity to his property as well as hers, and make sure that she has access to it. Based on the staff report, she does. She has the ability to be able to connect to it. We have adequate capacity on both water and the sewer side. And concerning any odors, absolutely, we can certainly look into that as well.
And wouldn't hooking into the city's sewer be better than a septic tank for the neighbor?
Absolutely.
Yes, typically it is, correct. Yes, because septic systems, of course, just like anything, has the propensity to fail. And certainly if it's in a water supply watershed, that adds additional issues.
Yeah, and just to clarify, Mr. Borchers, the applicant already has all the easements they need for water and sewer. Is that correct?
That's what I'm gonna have to confirm.
Okay,
And that's
all
what I
right,
will
'cause I thought I
confirm
heard
and
earlier
make
that
sure.
Maybe she was missing something on that southern side. but-
Correct, correct. Yeah,
Okay.
based on the staff report, the sewer is located to the south, so she just has to be able to, if she's got to cross other properties, then she'll have to get an easement associated with it.
So in best case, she already has what she needs. In worst case, we approve tonight, but she still has to work with the other property owner for an easement.
Correct, and that's what we'll confirm.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Mr. Smith, any further questions?
No, that.
I should say any further comments?
No, I'm good. That
Okay.
takes care of what I wanted to address. Like I said, my main concern was the odors that we're getting right now. And they're just until recently that they've finished the line toward Publix, we've started getting odors. So that's been my concern.
Ms. Clay, did you have any further questions or comments? You've got 5 minutes.
No, not at the moment. For Mr. Smith, I can tell you that I won't be building a house for at least another 2 or 3 years because of the market, but I just want to go ahead and get this done so that when it is time, it's already set.
Yeah, I understand.
Thank you. Mr. Smith, anything further from you?
No, I'm good. Thank you.
Thank you. Can I have a motion to close the public
So
hearing?
moved.
Second.
Moved by Mr. Holston, seconded by Mrs. Hightower. All in favor, say aye.
Move,
Opposed?
move H.
I second the
Second.
motion.
H4 is moved by Mayor Pro Tem, seconded by Mr. Holston. Council, please vote. Mrs. Hoffman? Mr. Holston?
Yes.
Dr. Wells? Mayor Pro Tem?
Yes.
I'm a yes. Ms. Abusawader?
Yes.
Mr. Outling?
Yes.
Mrs. Thurm?
Yes.
And Mrs. Hightower?
Yes.
That passes 9-0. Now I need a motion and a second on H5.
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Holston,
Second.
seconded by Mrs. Hightower. Council, please vote. Mrs. Hoffman? Mr. Holston?
Yes.
Dr. Wells? Mayor Pro
Excuse
Tem?
me, Mayor Vaughn, that will require the reading of the
I'm
consistency
sorry.
statement.
I apologize.
I can
Mr.
pull that up for
Holston,
if.
could you
need.
read that
Is
into
that,
the
is that
record?
5 or 6?
For 5.
It is
5,
five.
okay, here we go. Yes, the Greensboro City Council believes that its action to approve the original zoning request for the property described as 682 Knox Road from County RS 40 MH, residential single family in a manufactured home overlay district, to City CDR 3, conditional district residential single family 3, to be consistent with the adopted GSO 2040 comprehensive plan, and considers the action taken to be reasonable and the public interest for the following reasons. The request is consistent with the comprehensive plan's future built form map and future land use map. The proposed city CDR 3 zoning district as conditioned permits uses which fit the context of surrounding area and limits negative impacts on the adjacent properties. And the request is reasonable due to the size, physical conditions, and other attributes of the area. It will benefit the property owner and surrounding community, and approval is in the public interest.
Okay, so that was moved by Mr. Holston and seconded by Mrs. Hightower, I believe. Council, please vote. Mrs. Hoffman? Mr. Holston?
Yes.
Dr. Wells? Mayor Pro Tem? I'm a yes. Ms. Abusawader?
Yes.
Mr. Outling?
Yes.
Mrs. Thurm?
Yes. Yes.
And Mrs. Hightower? And that passes 9-0. Thank you. Our next few items have been continued, so we move to item number H9. And I'll read them all in together. It is kind of a long one, so. Item number H9 is a public hearing for a resolution to authorize the 2022-2023 annual action plan application in the amount of $5,971,776 U.S. Department of HUD entitlement funds. And item H10, public hearing for a resolution to authorize submission of the annual action plan application in the amount of $2,524,935 Community Development Block Grant CDBG program funds. Item H11, public hearing for an ordinance to adopt the fiscal year 2022-2023 budget for the Community Development Block Grant CDBG in the amount of $2,524,935. Item H12 is a public hearing for a resolution to authorize submission of annual action plan application in the amount of $2,128,863 home consortium program funds and the conduct of home consortium activities for the 2022-2023 fiscal year. Item H13 is a public hearing for an ordinance to adopt fiscal year 2022-2023 budget for the home grant in the amount of $2,128,863. Item H14 is a public hearing for a resolution to authorize submission of the annual action plan application in the amount of $196,979 of Emergency Solutions Grant ESG program funds and the conduct of ESG program activities for the 2022-2023 fiscal year. Item H15, public hearing for an ordinance to adopt the fiscal year 2022-2023 budget for the Emergencies Solutions Grant ESG in the amount of $196,979. Item 16, public hearing for a resolution to authorize submission of the annual action plan application in the amount of $1,120,999 of housing opportunities for persons with AIDS, HOPWA programs funds. And item number H17, a public hearing for an ordinance to adopt fiscal year 2022-2023 budget for the housing opportunities for persons with AIDS HOPWA grant in the amount of $1,120,999. We will vote on each of those individually. We have,
I can
Would you-
run through it really quickly if you'd like for me to, and. you can ask
well,
questions.
I would
Or if
kind
you
of
don't
like
need-
to know what the grand total is,
Okay.
that all of this will be spent for housing and
Yes.
homelessness.
Yes, so just really quickly, I'll run through this. So the goals of the action plan are to increase the supply of decent, affordable housing, promote a suitable living environment, and expand economic opportunities. The approval process is our annual action plan. It obviously goes through HUD. HUD announced the FY22 allocations in May. The adoption process is a public comment period, council meeting tonight, and then by August 16th, our plan needs to be submitted to HUD. The breakdown is this: CDBG funding, community development block grant funding is $2,374,935. Home investment is $2,028,863. ESG is $196,979, and HOPWA is $1,120,999. And just for clarification, ESG, the Emergency Solutions Grants, those are our homeless prevention dollars. HOPWA is the only one that has any substantial increase from prior years, and that's because Housing Opportunities for Persons with AIDS has changed their process. Our funding has nearly doubled. It's because they used to base your allocation on numbers of people who had died of HIV and AIDS. Now they base it on survivor rates. So we have a higher allocation than typically do. And I can run through the CDBG allocation really quickly for you all. Program administration is about $600,000. $18,000 is used by the Human Rights Department for fair housing. $711,000 for citywide rehab. $200,000 in neighborhood investment, $300,000 in infrastructure redevelopment, $200,000 for emergency shelter, $120,000 in homeless prevention, and $100,000 for contingent activities. That's the general breakdown of how these funds are spent. And with a total, and I just went past the screen, but a little, just under $6 million. This is the breakdown. You can review if you'd like. Again, it breaks down the numbers I just went through. As it relates to CDBG. This is the breakdown for Home Investment Partnership Program. And that largely is where our affordable housing and development dollars are coming in for gap funding and things of that nature. And then the final piece is that $196,000 is typically all used for rapid rehousing to get people from homelessness into housing as quickly as we can. And I've told you already, HOPWA has nearly doubled because of the way that now they calculate that benefit to your community. And then there's just a breakdown of the allocation. 65% of that funding goes to increasing our supply of decent, affordable housing. The remainder of it is split fairly evenly between suitable living environment and expanding economic opportunities and administrative costs. Happy to
Ms.
answer
Kennedy,
questions.
are there any plans for workforce development housing, workforce housing?
So our goal, and the goal really under housing GSO, is targeted for folks that make 80% of area median income and below. And that's largely the working class, right?
Yeah.
With a primary focus on folks that make below 60%. So yes, is the short answer. That's really the bread and butter of who we're working to serve. Michelle, if you don't mind, you talked about 80% of AMI and below, but a lot of the folks watching Yep. don't really know what those numbers are. Can you Yep. kind of give dollar figures for? I do. I want to say that, and I'm gonna look at Cindy, she may know off the top of her head. I want to say that 80%, she may have left me. Oh, 80% is right around 43 with the new adjustments. So 80% of area median income is right around $43,000 a year for a household. So that's kind of that price range that we're really targeted towards and below.
But for down payment assistance, we are looking at actually raising that level a little bit for that workforce housing?
For
because of-
down payment assistance, the target of down payment assistance as well as outlined in housing GSO is that 80% and below. There is a little bit of a cushion. You can go above that within down payment assistance. We're also looking at expansion into the Community Heroes program that's for first responders, city employees, all of those folks, and that can go up to 120% if you have a qualifying employment
Mhm.
position.
With that, I know you said city employees. What about teachers?
We have those included in what we're proposing for that. It would fall under kind of folks that fall under first responders, city employees, people that are essentially that kind of infrastructure for our community. And we should have that to you all shortly to take a look at the guidelines that we're
And
considering
that
for
could
that.
go up to 120.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. All right, so
Move
we'll,
H9.
so H9 moved by Mrs. Johnson, seconded by Mr. Holston. Council, please vote. Oops, sorry. Mrs. Hoffman? Mr. Holston?
Yes.
Dr. Wells? Mayor Pro Tem, I'm a yes. Mr. Bucwader?
Yes.
Mr. Outling?
Yes.
Mrs. Thurm?
Yes.
And Mrs. Hightower?
Yes.
That passes 9-0. Can I have a motion on H10?
Move the item.
Golden move.
Can I have a moved by Dr. Wells, second by
Second.
Mrs. Thurm? Council, please vote. Mrs. Hoffman? Mr. Holston?
Yes.
Dr. Wells? Mayor Pro Tem?
Yes.
I'm a yes. Mr. Bucwader?
Yes.
Mr. Outling?
Yes.
Mrs. Thurm?
Yes.
And Mrs. Hightower?
Yes.
That passes 9-0. Item number H11. Moved by Mr.
Second.
Bucwader, second by Mrs. Johnson. Council, please vote. Mrs. Hoffman? Mr. Holston? Dr. Wells? Mayor Pro Tem? I'm a yes. Mr. Bucwader?
Yes.
Mr. Outling?
Yes.
Mrs. Thurm?
Yes.
Mrs. Hightower?
Yes.
And that passes 9-0. Item H12.
Move the item.
Moved by Mrs. Thurm, second by Mrs. Bucwader. Council, please vote. Mrs. Hoffman? Mr. Holston?
Yes.
Dr. Wells? Mayor Pro Tem? I'm a yes. Mr. Bucwader?
Yes.
Mr. Outling?
Yes.
Mrs. Thurm?
Yes.
And Mrs. Hightower?
Yes.
That passes 9-0. Item H13. Dr. Wells?
Second.
Second by Mrs. Bucwader. Mrs. Hoffman? Mr. Holston?
Yes.
Dr. Wells? Mayor Pro Tem?
Yeah.
I'm a yes. Mrs. Bucwader?
Yes.
Mr. Outling?
Yes.
Mrs. Thurm?
Yes.
And Mrs. Hightower?
Yes.
That passes 9-0. Item H14.
So I
Maybe
have a
item-
question, Madam Mayor,
On
on
H14?
14 and 15. So, Mr. City Manager, I saw in the presentation, I guess, the application has to be submitted to HUD by August 22nd. Because I was going to ask about a timeline. I had a very disturbing conversation today. And so I was just wondering if there's any room or any possibility to resubmit RFP for the emergency, the ESOG program funds. And then when we receive those program funds in, then where is the direction on how they are distributed? Because I don't,
I think the application to HUD, Michelle, correct me, but I believe it's August 16.
It is August 16th.
Okay, so if you're gonna issue an RFP between now and then, I'm not sure that that's possible. Because you still have to do the RFP interviews.
We are in the submission process for the RFP for all of these funding
Okay.
pieces now in order to meet the timeline of getting this back to HUD by August 16th.
So the RFP is out, people have responded and you're
Yes.
reviewing. Okay, so I guess what you're saying is, can we reopen the opportunity, especially for the ESG? So we may have that conversation offline, but I'm not sure that that is possible at this point in the.
And just to clarify, you're asking about use of ESG funds. All of our ESG funds are used for rapid rehousing.
I'm aware of why they're used, but I just want to know if how are they directed? Who are they directed to? So I guess this is just the application to request the money, and then the money will need to come in. So I'm just looking at what those dollars will be used for, how they'll be distributed.
Okay,
And so we can certainly have that further conversation.
okay.
Okay, I need a motion and a second on H14. Moved by Ms. Abuzawader, seconded by Mr. Holston. Council, please vote. Mrs. Hoffman? Mr. Holston?
Yes.
Dr. Wells? Mayor Pro Tem?
Yeah.
I'm a yes. Ms. Abuzawader?
Yes.
Mr. Outling?
Yes.
Mrs. Thurm?
Yes.
Mrs. Hightower?
Yes,
That passes 9-0. Motion on H15,
So moved.
moved by Mr. Holston,
Second.
seconded by Mrs. Thurm. Council, please vote. Mrs. Hoffman? Mr. Holston?
Yes.
Dr. Wells? Mayor Pro Tem?
Yes.
I'm a yes. Ms. Abuzawader?
Yes.
Mr. Outling?
Yes.
Mrs. Thurm?
Yes.
Mrs. Hightower?
yes,
And that passes 9-0. I need a motion on H16.
Move the item.
Moved by Mrs. Hoffman, and the second was by Mrs. Thurm. Council, please vote. Mrs. Hoffman? Mr. Holston?
Yes.
Dr. Wells? Mayor Pro Tem?
Yes.
I'm a yes. Ms. Abuzawader?
Yes.
Mr. Outling?
Yes.
Mrs. Thurm?
Yes.
And Mrs. Hightower?
yes,
That passes 9-0. And lastly, in
Move the item.
Mrs. Johnson, and seconded by Mr. Holston. Council, please vote. Mrs. Hoffman? Mr. Holston?
Yes.
Dr. Wells? Mayor Pro Tem?
Yes.
I'm a yes. Ms. Abuzawader?
Yes.
Mr. Outling?
Yes.
Mrs. Thurm?
Yes.
And Mrs. Hightower?
yes.
And that passes 9-0. We're going to move into the business portion of our agenda. So let's take a quick break. Let's try to keep it to 10 minutes. Thank you. Dr. Wells, since it's landfill related and I heard everybody. Seconded by Mr. Holston. Council, please vote. Mrs. Hoffman? Mr. Holston?
Yes.
Dr. Wells? Yes. Mayor Pro Tem? I'm a yes. Ms. Abuzawader?
Yes.
Mr. Outling?
Yes.
Mrs. Thurm?
Yes.
And Mrs. Hightower?
Yes.
And that passes 9-0. Item I.2 is a resolution approving change order number 1 in the amount of $303,155 with Bar Construction for Phase 2 improvements at Spencer Love Tennis Complex for contract 2018-059A. I heard Mrs. Johnson and Ms. Abuzawader. Council, please vote. Mrs. Hoffman? Mr. Holston?
Yes.
Dr. Wells? Mayor Pro Tem? I am a yes. Ms. Abuzawader?
Yes.
Mr. Outling?
Yes.
Mrs. Thurm?
Yes.
And Mrs. Hightower?
Yes.
Thank you. That passes 9-0. I'm going to read I.3 through I.6 together. Item I.3 is a resolution approving contract 2022-006B in the amount of $615,000 with Davis, Martin, and Powell Associates, Inc. for the construction administration for resident project representative of the Sandy Creek Lift Station, Greensboro Randolph Megasite. Item I.4, resolution to amend the Water Resources Capital Project Revenue Bond Fund budget to establish funding for construction administrative services for the Sandy Creek Lift Station Sewer Construction Project, Greensboro Randolph Megasite, in the amount of $615,000. Item I.5, resolution approving a change order in the amount of $1,011,166,000.28 for contract 2020-041A with Jimmy R. Lynch Sons for the Liberty Road Water and Sewer Improvements Phase 3 project, Greensboro Randolph Megasite. And item I.6, ordinance to amend Water Resources Capital Project Revenue Bond Fund to amend funding for construction change order number 1 for the Liberty Road Water and Sewer Construction Project in the amount of $1,011,167, Greensboro Randolph Megasite.
Move item I3.
Madam Mayor, I respectfully ask to be recused from these items. The law firm at which I'm a partner, Brooks Pierce, represents the Greensboro Randolph Megasite Foundation in ongoing matters.
Move to recuse.
Moved by Mrs. Johnson,
Second.
seconded by Mr. Holston. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
That passes 8-0. And Mr. City Manager, you and I had, I'm sorry, Mr. City Attorney, you and I discussed earlier that my boyfriend is a part-time consultant for Davis, Martin, and Powell Associates. And we talked about whether or not I would need to recuse myself from this item. And your answer was
No.
no. Thank you.
Move item I3.
So item number I.3.
Yeah.
Moved by Mr. Holston,
Second.
seconded by Mrs. Hightower. Council, please vote.
Only because it's got MWBE on it.
Excuse me.
Said only because it's got MWBE on.
Mrs. Hoffman? Mr. Holston?
Yes.
Dr. Wells? Mayor Pro Tem? I'm a yes. Ms. Abuzawader? Mrs. Thurm?
Yes.
And Mrs. Hightower.
Yes.
That passes 8-0. Item I.4,
Move the item.
moved by Mr. Holston, seconded
Second.
by Mrs. Thurm. Council, please vote. Mrs. Hoffman? Mr. Holston?
Yes.
Dr. Wells? Mayor Pro Tem? I'm a yes. Ms. Abuzawader?
Yes.
Mrs. Thurm?
Yes.
And Mrs. Hightower.
Yes.
That passes 8-0. I.5, moved by Dr. Wells, seconded by Mrs. Hoffman. Council, please vote. Mrs. Hoffman? Mr. Holston?
Yes.
Dr. Wells? Mayor Pro Tem? I'm a yes. Ms. Abuzawader?
Yes.
Mrs. Thurm?
Yes.
And Mrs. Hightower?
Yes.
And that passes 8-0. Item I.6,
Move the item.
moved by Mrs. Thurm, seconded by Mrs. Hoffman. Council, please vote. Mrs. Hoffman? Mr. Holston?
Yes.
Dr. Wells? Mayor Pro Tem? I am a yes. Ms. Abuzawader?
Yes.
Mrs. Thurm?
Yes.
And Mrs. Hightower?
Yes.
That passes 8-0. Item number I.7 is a resolution approving a contract for $4,642,000 with CDM Smith for the groundwater remedial investigation and remedy implementation project at the Ed Kitchen Operations Center.
Move the item.
Second.
Moved by Mrs. Hightower, seconded by Ms. Abuzawader. Council, please vote. Mrs. Hoffman? Mr. Holston?
Yes.
Dr. Wells? Mayor Pro Tem? I'm a yes. Ms. Abuzawader?
Yes.
Mr. Outling?
Yes.
Mrs. Thurm?
Yes.
And Mrs. Hightower?
Yes.
And that passes 9-0. Item I.8 is an ordinance amending Chapter 29 of the Code of Ordinances regarding water and sewer rates outside the city.
Move.
Moved by Dr. Wells,
Second.
seconded by Mrs. Hightower. Council, please vote. Mrs. Hoffman? Mr. Holston?
Yes.
Dr. Wells? Mayor Pro Tem? I'm a yes. Ms. Abuzawader?
Yes.
Mr. Outling?
Yes.
Mrs. Thurm?
Yes.
And Mrs. Hightower?
Yes.
That passes 9-0. Item I.9 is a resolution approving GHA issuance of bonds for Townsend Trace LLC.
Move the item.
Moved by Dr. Wells, seconded by Mr. Holston.
So Madam Mayor, do you want to explain to the public what that means when you talk about issuing of bonds?
Mr. City Manager?
I think this is from Housing and Neighborhood Development. I don't know if Michelle Kennedy or Cindy is still here.
Oh, and we do have somebody on Zoom for item 9, Dustin Mills.
Yes, ma'am. He is still in the Zoom call.
Mr.
He
Manager,
is
I'm
still on the
happy
Zoom
to
call?
speak to it if you'd like. This is a ministerial duty. It's required by local government in which the project is located for the Greensboro Housing Authority bonds to be approved. This does not add any bond debt to the city of Greensboro, or you're not making any pledge to repay the money. It's just an Internal Revenue Service Code requirement that for the Greensboro Housing Authority to borrow funds for a project, a local government in which the project is located has to provide approval for the bonds.
Does that answer any question?
Yeah, that's fine.
Move the item.
So Tristan
There's
Williams,
somebody-
is that for this item? We do have a speaker on Zoom.
Yes, ma'am. We have Dustin Mills and Tristan Williams on Zoom that had signed up for this item.
And is that for comments or to answer questions? So is it Mills? Mr. Mills? Or Mr. Williams? Okay, we do have do I have a motion for I-9?
So moved.
Oh, yes, I'm sorry. Goldie and seconded by Hugh. Council, please vote. Mrs. Hoffman? Mr. Holston?
Yes.
Dr. Wells? Mayor Pro Tem? I am a yes. Ms. Abuzawader?
Yes.
Mr. Outling?
Yes.
Mrs. Thurm?
Yes.
And Mrs. Hightower?
Yes.
And that passes 9-0. Sorry. Item number I.10 is an ordinance allocating Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act Fund budget in the amount of $1,340,326, moved by Mr. Holston, seconded by Mrs. Johnson. Council, please vote. Mrs. Hoffman? Mr. Holston?
Yes.
Dr. Wells? Mayor Pro Tem, I'm a yes. Mr. Busewader? Mr. Outling?
Yes.
Mrs. Thurm?
Yes.
And Mrs. Hightower?
Yes.
That passes 9-0. Item number I.11 is a resolution authorizing a commitment of 2.5 million to Piedmont Business Capital, Greensboro Women and Minority Opportunity Recovery Enterprise, Grow More Fund. We do have some speakers to address that item. Mr. Jones?
And I would move that item once the speakers before Hugh opens.
Moved by Mrs. Hightower, seconded by Mrs. Johnson. But Mr. Jones, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And I'm happy to have an opportunity. We're happy to have an opportunity to just address the city council. I'm here. My name is George Jones. I'm the executive director for Piedmont Business Capital. Behind me is my director for commercial business lending, Mr. Hanif Omar. We're excited about the opportunity to not only focus really on increasing lending support for our small businesses here in Greensboro, but primarily having the opportunity to provide a combination of loans and grants for those businesses particularly impacted through COVID. And so this opportunity will allow us to not only leverage the resources here, but also we have access to private capital and additional funding, and this puts us in a good position to ensure that the small businesses, women, minority communities have an opportunity to secure funding, but also participate in the upcoming growth opportunities here in the region. And if there are any specific questions for me or Mr. Hanif, we'll answer them then.
So, Mr. Jones, can you speak a little bit to the grants? Because that's a conversation we've been having for a while about how do we do that through this ARP money, because this is ARP funding, but it has specific intent and purpose. And I think the mayor and I both been, she wanted some of this too, but where the opportunities are even within the category of that as well. That's why this is critically important. That we do that, because we know we have some minority, small business and nonprofits that have been looking for these opportunities, the small grant opportunities for quite a while now. And if we can move that forward, this helps that.
Yeah, so we have this particular property, this particular money is broken down into two categories. There's roughly about 1.5 that will be debt capital for small businesses. Those are loans that we'll be managing in our portfolio for small businesses. And then there's a portion of this property, of this funding that's strategically tied to grant funding. And we have an eligibility criteria of up to 25,000. But the priority for this area is for small businesses that may not have resources specific to acquiring technology, infrastructure capacity for growth. And so we have a program called DICE, and that grant funding will be helping those small businesses develop technical infrastructure opportunities. It will also help us work with small businesses that need capacity development support for growth. And specifically, I'm going to ask Hanif to just speak specifically to the programs that we're targeting based on some of our businesses that are interested in contract service loans and or interested in another version of factoring. And I'll leave it at that, but yes, sir.
Thank you guys for the opportunity to speak here.
Give us your name.
Oh, excuse me. My name is Hanif Omar. I'm the Director of Commercial Lending for Piedmont Business Capital. So the following up with what Mr. Jones said is that we've studied throughout the country how ARPA funds have been used by different municipalities and or counties. And we have a tremendous opportunity here in Greensboro to do both things, provide debt capital in the form of loans, but also have the ability to provide grants to eligible business owners. And so having those two elements is unique. Some municipalities have one or the other, but our ability to do that, like Mr. Jones said, helps some companies that were affected by COVID, help them capacity-wise. And it also allows them to grow and to really various expenses they could use these funds on in the form of a grant. And so if they wanted to move beyond 25,000, then we can also do lending with them in the short term. So it allows them to at least get up to 25,000 in the form of a grant, but also if their need is wider and bigger, we can provide reasonable debt capital for them. And so that's what we plan to do. And we're targeting, obviously, women-owned, Black-owned companies, but it's open to all small businesses that have been affected by COVID as well. And specific industries have been service industries, particularly that were affected by COVID. And technology is also one of our focuses. And so we're open to doing that with just having a very impactful move here in the city.
Great.
Thank you.
Well, thank you for your work and thank you for pulling this together. I think it really does focus on the needs of who we're trying to reach. We say we support small business, but we know our minority women-owned businesses have been struggling. And so we want to be able to provide them opportunities as well. But in your lending purpose, you speak about contract services. So
Right. So the bottom line is we've surveyed this community and we have a number of small businesses, minority contractors specifically, that have access issues related to bonding, performance bonding, payment bonding. And so one of the things that we're able to do in this particular scenario is assist them with surety on some of the contracts. The other issue that we've looked at and identified is that a lot of our trucking entities, independently owned contractors, have always had issues with cash flow. And so factoring has been what typically those businesses are having to deal with. And in this particular scenario, we're able to provide them contract service loans to avoid them going into deeper debt through this process. I would say the last thing is that, and I use the word capital plus because PBC focuses primarily on helping these businesses become financially good stewards. And oftentimes the avatar that we talk about, that we think about, is a small women-owned business with no employees. We have found that businesses across our community are sometimes second and third generation legacy businesses with 25, 35, 45 employees. In the healthcare area specifically, we have several businesses with 60 to 70 employees because of CNAs. And so the funding that we're talking about really has given these businesses the capacity for growth and given them the capacity for sustainable opportunity. We thank you for your time.
yes, sir. And thank you. And thank you for the work you've done and the work that you continue to do. So in our community, this is important. So
Thank you. We do have a motion by Mrs. Hightower and a second by Mrs. Johnson. I do want to say that this funding is coming out of the ARP funds. It doesn't say it on the agenda item, just so people understand where that's coming from. Council, please vote. Mrs. Hoffman? Mr. Holston?
Yes.
Dr. Wells? Mayor Pro Tem? I am a yes. Ms. Abuzawader?
Yes.
Mr. Outling?
Yes.
Mrs. Thurm?
Yes.
And Mrs. Hightower?
yes,
And that passes 9-0. Item number I.12 is a resolution authorizing the city manager to enter into a reimbursement agreement for an unnamed attraction for construction for certain sewer improvements comprised of a proposed 8-inch public utility line extension with encasement underneath. Mr. Borchers? I moved by, we're going to have some, okay. Mr. Borchers?
Yes. Good evening, Madam Mayor and members of council. Thank you for the opportunity to bring this reimbursement agreement to you. We're excited to partner with Realty Link Development to provide sewer service by way of sewer extension underneath Bridford Parkway to a 30-acre parcel that's bounded by I-40 Bridford Parkway and Guilford College Road. And with that, of course, we're opening up that whole tract to be able to provide utility services to it. The part of this development is going to be anchored by Top Golf, but there also will be out parcels as well that will benefit from the water and sewer extension. Water is located on 2 of the boundaries. And the other thing that I'd like to point out that this definitely supports our mandate to extend water and provide water and sewer services to all areas within the city of Greensboro. So I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Glad you teed that up for us.
Mrs. Stern? Can you confirm for us, you said that was providing water and sewer to 30+ acres, I believe you said.
Correct.
What percentage of that, do you know how many acres Top Golf is out of that, or?
That I do not know. I'll defer to Deputy City Manager.
We do
Wilson.
have a representative of the company available. Mr. Duggins?
Madam Mayor, Nathan Duggins with Tuggle Duggins here on behalf of Realty Link. It's about 32 acres, I think, is the site. And Topgolf will be roughly, I think, 8 acres of that. There's some other out parcel developments that will be along Guilford College. A hotel's planned, and then some indoor entertainment opportunities will also be on the site. This is a challenging site. This site is set undeveloped for a long time. The topography moving from west to east is very challenging. We've got some other issues, but we're excited about this opportunity, and we appreciate everything that the staff has done to make this a possibility. You're welcome.
Mr. Outling?
Yeah, I do not golf, but I understand that those who do oftentimes really love Top Golf. And so it's a really exciting thing that we may soon have a Top Golf in our community. As a matter of process, I do want to share and publicly remark news of Top Golf possibly coming to our area. I think now is being said for the first time publicly by Mr. Borchers. I understand why a company may not want their name shared publicly when they're prospectively going to acquire land. Once when you name those things, all of a sudden, people start flocking to nearby properties, kind of speculating, and it can become more expensive for a company to operate and do business. I do think, that being said, however, it's important to remember that for us, we're using community dollars to support projects. And so going forward, I think, balancing the business interests with the need for transparency, it would be ideal to have the public have the information sooner, so that if they wanted to opine and comment on whatever the city council is voting on, they could do so before the meeting. What kind of process matters aside, it seems like an exciting opportunity. There was a lot of discussion earlier this evening about our incentive policy. And this isn't going under that policy, and it's, I know, for very good reason, but if Mr. Wilson or Mr. Manager, you could explain why this is a different process, why there's not discussion about, for example, $15 an hour, but this is still appropriate for the city to provide financial to support you. I think that'd be helpful for the public.
Yeah, I'd be happy to answer that question. Thank you for your question. So in general, when we look at projects and support for projects, we look at the definition of what they're bringing to the table. And in this particular case, we would categorize this as retail. And so under your economic development incentive program, the guidelines for participation specifically say retail is not eligible. So that would be number one. Number two is under your own grant program, there is an indication that we're targeting areas of reinvestment or downtown. This is neither of those targeted areas. So in this particular case, it didn't fit into our current programming for economic development as we define it. It's still certainly great for our economy. Beyond that, we look at site development. And in this particular case, the site is 30+ acres. We happen to know there's additional acreage in the area that will likely be developed, which requires us to have expanded sewer capacity. So in this particular case, it gave us the ability to look at what exactly would we need for this developed site to serve the area. And of course, the city of Greensboro wants to provide that infrastructure. So we are partnering in this venture, but we will own the infrastructure that is coming in through the right of way once that is constructed.
And one of the concerns that I initially had until had an opportunity to work through it with staff and some others is that it would perhaps be perceived as an end around our other incentive policy, which has requirements such as $15 an hour. Certainly in my analysis and discussions with staff, the city provides incentives and develops sites in hopes that tenants will move there in the future. There will be employment, so on and so forth. And the city does that with some frequency, including the past several years. This is very similar to that in that we're making infrastructure improvements on a site. So that's, to me, the proper way to look at it. It's just that there's an actual tenant that's strongly considering the site. So it makes it a better case than even when the city ordinarily makes these infrastructure investments. And to me, that's why, just sharing publicly in my analysis, this is a really good project. It's the proper framework consistent with how we make infrastructure investments. And it's worthy of support, notwithstanding the fact that it doesn't meet the requirements of our traditional economic development policy, but it certainly meets what we've done in terms of infrastructure investment in hopes of getting a Topgolf or some other tenant for a developer in the city. Additionally, I will add, what makes it a little bit different than some other incentives is this is like city infrastructure. So the developer, in working with its tenant, will make infrastructure investments and get reimbursed, but that's city infrastructure. So quite frankly, irrespective of the tenant, that city infrastructure will exist and contribute hopefully to economic development in our tax base for years to come, irrespective of whatever tenant happens to be there. Although, like I said, even as a non-golfer, I recognize how many people are going to be excited about Topgolf. So thanks to staff for taking the time to discuss it, and congratulations, hopefully, to the tenant who will in fact choose to be in Greensboro. Hopefully golfers and non-golfers alike will enjoy it.
I think there might be some non-golfers who will enjoy it. I think it's going to be a great asset for our community. Thank you to the council. Thank you to the staff for all your help. It's been a long road, but we appreciate all your assistance in this. Thank you.
Mrs. Thurm, did you have a comment?
I just wanted to thank everybody involved in working so hard on this particular location. I know it's had its challenges for
Yes,
the
ma'am.
past couple of years. But this is a really big step for District 5, and it will really help an area that has teetered, really, quite honestly, being a problem area. And I think this is a great move for District 5, and I'm very excited about it. So thank you all for pushing through and hanging in there with us, and glad it looks like it's going to work out. So thank you.
Mrs. Hightower?
Yeah, thank you very much. So while Mr. Outland went into detail of some of the things that I'd already had concerns about. And so I understand the difference in the economic development, incentives that we normally do, but we have done something similar in the past. And I thought that even so, while we may not be requiring the $15 an hour, which I'm always very concerned about, and hope that the individuals that work there will be compensated. And understand that's not an agreement, but it is, just so you know, a concern for me.
Absolutely.
That's where I'm at. The MWBE piece. And we did something like this similarly on other projects where it was water sewer infrastructure being put in. And so, and it was looked at as, because we were putting money, we were going to get reimbursed. We were going to reimburse them. We still were taking that, those city dollars, those taxpayer dollars, and paying for that infrastructure. It's great that Topgolf is coming. I don't golf either. I tried.
Not yet.
Trust me. Unless you can ride and golf. But, and I think it's great. However, I think any opportunity we can seize upon, and we don't want to miss those opportunities. And so as you're building in infrastructure with water and sewer, there's opportunities still there. And so this is not even governed by, as we hear oftentimes, DOT monies that control it to that degree. And so I would hope that there would be opportunity within the body of this. We could encapsulate some way to have them as part of the project.
Most assuredly, that'll be part of the agreement. Will be our MWBE requirements, dedication of the infrastructure in the right of way. There'll be a few other things associated with that. There is some DOT involvement with the street, and there's some approval required there, but we've certainly made that clear and there's been agreement that that will be part of our guidelines.
Thank you very much. Welcome.
Thank you.
Mr. Wilson, I want to say thank you for all the hard work you've done pulling these pieces together. I think this is going to be something great for the city of Greensboro and our region. People won't have to drive to Charlotte or Raleigh anymore to visit a Topgolf facility. I did go to Charlotte. I am a non-golfer. I went with a golfer, and we both had a lot of fun. And one thing that Topgolf is known for is their food,
Yes.
which was really, really good. And it is a place where companies go out and, bring in customers and have business retreats. And I think that it will bring an awful lot to our community. And I just want to say that in November 19th, 2019, the Triad Business Journal did a survey, a month-long survey. If you could have anything come to the city of Greensboro, to the Triad, what would it be? And it says what was crystal clear is that this area is chomping at the bit for a Topgolf location, as that was the most popular of all responses. And I know that we have been working on that since
That's about- yeah,
2019.
that's about the timeline.
Actually before this came out. So when this came out, I was really excited because I was so hopeful that there was one on the horizon. So thank you for all your hard work. This is not a typical economic development incentive. It will serve that area. It will be good for other people who are coming in. It is not just for this one particular source. So thank you. Mrs. Buzoider?
I just wanted to say thank you. And, this just goes to show, economic development doesn't happen overnight. It's taken years.
Yes, ma'am.
It's taken a lot of years, but here we are, reaping benefits of things that have been going on for 10, 15 years. And in this case, 5, 6 years, whatever. So thank you all so much for not only sticking, being with it, but also sticking with it. So thank you. And you too, Mr. Deputy City Manager. So thank you all very much. And staff, all the staff, and Mike Borchers, yes. So thank you all. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Mrs. Hoffman, then Mr. Holston.
Yeah, I'd like to really thank Chris and Mike again. I love it when I see people creatively figuring out how to do something that's good for the city of Greensboro. And I will tell you, there is a cool factor with Topgolf, just like there's a cool factor with Trader Joe's. And cities who are able to attract those kinds of businesses, it really speaks really well and enthusiastically about the city and what's going on there. So I know we've been working on this and trying to get them here for several years, and so it's great to see this happen. So thank you very much.
Yes, and I also am very excited. It's the multiplier effect. We've talked for months and months about Boom and Toyota and Syngenta, and all the ones that are coming, the ones that are staying. And I've always said that they're not just coming to work. They're also coming to do the other things. They're looking for these types of activities. They're looking for the parks. They're looking for the other things that we provide in this community, because they're not just coming by themselves, they're bringing their families with them. And this is just going to be another step in the momentum of what's happening in Greensboro. Greens booming. I think we've said it. You're welcome. I'm just really excited about what this continues to mean for what's happening in the state of Greensboro.
I'd just like to say thank you as well for your vision, your tenacity. And it seems, I look at it like a quilt. You just put that piece in, we need it. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. So this item was moved by Mrs. Hoffman, seconded by Mrs. Thurm. Mrs. Thurm, council, please vote. Mrs. Hoffman? Yes. Mr. Holston?
Yes.
Dr. Wells? Mayor Pro Tem?
Yes.
I'm a yes. Mrs. Buzoider?
Yes.
Mr. Outling?
Yes.
Mrs. Thurm?
Yes.
And Mrs. Hightower?
Yes.
Thank you. And that passes 9-0. We'll now move on to J.1, which is a resolution to authorize an amendment to interlocal agreement with Guilford County for reduction of ERA program funds. to,
Speaker.
is there a
I'll
question?
move the item.
Just if you need me,
Oh, you move the,
just if
No,
you
no,
need me.
that's okay.
I'll move the
Ms.
item.
Thurm moved the item. Do I have a second?
Second.
By Dr. Wells. Council, please vote. Mrs. Hoffman? Mr. Holston?
Yes.
Dr. Wells?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem? I'm a yes. Mrs. Bucwader?
Yes.
Mr. Outling?
Yes.
Mrs. Thurm?
Yes.
And Mrs. Hightower. And that passes 9-0. Item number J.2 is an ordinance to amend the allocation of ERA funding from Guilford County in the amount of $3,500,000.
Move the item.
Moved by Dr. Wells,
Second.
seconded by Mrs. Johnson. Council, please vote. Mrs. Hoffman? Yes. Mr. Holston?
Yes.
Dr. Wells? Yes. Mayor Pro Tem?
Yes.
I'm a yes. Mrs. Bucwader?
Yes.
Mr. Outling?
Yes.
Mrs. Thurm?
Yes.
And Mrs. Hightower. And that passes 9-0.
So earlier tonight, you approved $500,000 that we will move immediately to Greensboro Housing Coalition to start getting that money out the door more quickly. The other piece of this is this will allow us to more quickly move through the process of getting these funds into the hands of the folks that need them. And just for reference, and staff sent this down while we were in the meeting, but in 15 months, we've assisted 3,009 households. So that's an average household assistance rate of about 200 households a month. So that's a pretty impressive task when you look at the capacity that was and is our ERAP program.
Can you say how many people how many people are doing that? 200 per month or whatever?
Total, if you broke it down by full-time equivalents, it's roughly 8 people, including city staff.
Quick question.
So I have a
So
question.
Mr.
No.
Holston, then Mrs. Hightower.
I had my.
With the funds to whomever is going to be distributing them, is there also going to be an administrative component?
There is, we have some existing administrative funding that was left from the initial ERA 1 funding that we are allocating for that purpose.
Thank you.
Mrs. Hightower?
So my question is, because most recently county took back 322 of these ERAP clients, leaving us only with 596. How quickly is this money going to move those? Because they have been waiting significantly, almost a year.
We have worked with finance. We are currently making direct payments for ERAP cases as they are approved leading up to this council meeting. Following this, Greensboro Housing Coalition will begin distributing those checks again. Our end date is scheduled right now to be about the end of October. Obviously, we'd like to be done sooner than that, but that's kind of our worst case scenario assumption to plow through the remaining cases and reapplications that we have.
So is Josie going to be, housing consultant, Greensboro Housing Coalition, going to be able to, now that she can move those checks again, because I'm sure she's been holding several rental checks, and that's part of the reason why landlords are mad and not wanting to rent to people anymore, is because the rents have been held. Is she gonna be able to go to court maybe, because that was supposed to be a solution as well, to meet them at court? And I know I've personally talked to some who've been to court 4, 5, 6 times. And judges have been kind of really lenient with them, magistrates have been. But is she gonna be able to go to court, perhaps bring that check to get these rents paid?
So the Greensboro Housing Coalition cuts checks once a week. And that is their organizational policy. For the last 2 weeks, we've been cutting any checks that they have or any of our other partners have to get them out the door more quickly until this allocation was approved. So I can't speak definitely to how quickly they're processing checks based on their internal processes, other than to say they do it on a specific day each week. As far as eviction prevention, the city has an employee that is present at all the eviction clinics and all the eviction dates at court. And that's his job, to get connected with those folks that have pending evictions and make sure that we've either made connection with that landlord or dropped off a check or they've picked it up or whatever that process needs to be to get it in the hands of folks as quickly as we can. And he's been doing that for 15 months.
And so I know Ms. Thurm just asked this question about how many people are doing it. But if we're dedicated to doing it, then we should be moving it fairly quickly. However, the county did hire some temporary staff. Has that been considered to help move this along?
We did. We considered that. It's probably been 8 months ago. And at that time, the feedback that we received from the county was while that was going well, the organization that they contracted with wasn't able to even fully staff their program. So we didn't have any reason to believe that they'd be able to staff ours, since they couldn't fully staff what the county needed at that time. So we continued on with our program as it was originally established.
Okay. Well, hopefully we can move these rent payments out the door with the passing of these 2 items tonight.
That's the hope. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other? No, thank you. So one thing that I forgot to mention earlier is that we have to welcome our Assistant City Manager, Nasha McCray. We know that Nasha will do a great job, and we're really pleased that you are here at the meeting this evening, and we look forward to working with you at a higher level. You've done such great things for our Parks and Recreation Department. We are a gold medal award winner from the NPRL and
Did they give you a broken mic?
No, I actually get to use the mic.
Yeah.
But thank you again, Madam Mayor and Council. Through the American Academy for Recreation and Parks Association and through the National Recreation Parks Association, we were awarded the National Gold Medal Award in 2020.
We are so proud of everything that our Parks and Recreation Department does. There was adult recess, I know, a week or two ago. I hate that I missed that, but it looked like a lot of fun. And Parks and Rec actually won an award for that last year, I think, for one of the great new programs. And it was actually almost a little piggish at that meeting because Greensboro Parks and Rec, what was the region that it wasn't just North Carolina, was it North and South Carolina?
It was our statewide conference for the North Carolina chapter of the Recreation Parks Association, and our annual awards were in Winston-Salem.
Yeah, and we just kept taking award after award. So that is wonderful. So thank you for all your hard work, and we look forward to you transferring that in other areas of the city.
Thank you.
Boards and commissions. Ms. Hoffman, any boards or commissions?
Yes, I would like to reappoint Ted Oliver to the Board of Adjustments, please.
Seconded by Ms. Abuzawader. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? That passes 9-0. Any others? No. Mr. Holston?
Yes, I have one. I'd like to reappoint Mr. Mark Isaacson to the War Memorial Commission.
Second.
That has been moved by Mr. Holston, seconded by Mrs. Johnson. Oh, and I'm supposed to ask what district? I believe that's District 3. That is District 3.
Is it 3? Yes.
Yes. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Mrs. Hoffman, what district were you appointing for? That was 4. Okay. Dr. Wells?
No.
Mrs. Johnson, I'm a no. Ms. Abuzawader?
Yes, I'd like to reappoint Sandra O'Connor to the Planning and Zoning Commission, District 4.
That was seconded by Mrs. Sturm. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That passes 9-0.
That's it.
Mr. Outling? Mrs. Sturm?
None for me.
Mrs. Hightower?
So I would like to appoint Omar Wasul to the Community Sustainability Committee.
Second.
And is that from District 1?
He is.
And are you replacing anyone?
No.
Okay, and that was seconded by Mrs. Johnson. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Sharon, did you have any other appointments?
Yes, I would like to appoint Dr. Angel Ahmad to the GTAC committee. That is District 1. She will be replacing Anita Cunningham, who will be finishing up her second term on 8/31. So she has served 6 years, and I thank Anita for her services. She is a site challenge writer, so she has brought a lot of insight to the commission, and Dr. Ahmad will as well.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And I think she has spoken in front of us a number of times.
She
hasn't
has, she absolutely has.
Thank you.
Madam
Dr. Rose?
Mayor.
I'd like to make an appointment to replace Terry Savoy on the Board of Adjustments, Tiffany Rudd.
Okay, so replacing Terry Savoy, Tiffany Rudd, and that's District 2?
That's District 2.
Okay, do we have a second?
I did.
Seconded by Mrs. Johnson. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? That passes 9-0.
Madam Mayor, pardon the interruption. Councilmember Hightower, would you like for that appointment to be effective August 31st when the appointment ends?
Yeah, by the time we send the letter and everything, it should roll right in together, because Anita's her term ends next month.
Okay, I just wanted to verify. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay, no other boards or commissions? Comments? Mayor Pro Tem?
Wow. Thank you, Madam Mayor. I was honored to read the resolution this past Saturday for the Carolyn Coleman Week of Peace done by the city of Greensboro. It was sponsored by Gate City Coalition, which is the Cure Violence Program, and Madam Mayor and Councilwoman Mary Kay and Councilwoman Hightower and I, all of us were there, and we read the resolution, and Ms. Hightower made some comments and gave Ms. Coleman's son a plaque. It was a very nice event, quite appropriate for a lady who always fought for justice and peace. So I was happy to be there. Thank goodness we were all there. Even though the tent fell in from
With
the
the rain?
weather. Yeah.
That was awful.
Tent fell in, I missed that.
Yeah, I think we left.
I think all of us
right in
missed it.
time.
Thank goodness we missed it.
Yeah.
But anyway, it was a great affair.
Mr. Boozwaiter?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'm sure Mrs. Hightower is going to talk about the dedication for Carolyn Coleman Way, so I won't go into all that detail but it was just a very special event, and a great group of people organized it, and Mrs. Hightower had helped, I know, in many ways. So I'm sure she'll talk about that in a moment. Several of us were at the Cambodian Language Access Symposium last Saturday. That was where the Cambodian community came together and was wanting assistance from DMV and our state legislators to have some things translated into their language. And the state legislators who were there certainly said they will move ahead with that, because a lot of forms and a lot of things that they fill out are translated into other languages, the top 5 languages. And they didn't think it would be much trouble to add that one. So the whole point is that it was just a great way for all of us to learn a little bit about their culture, find out their concerns and move forward. They invited the legislators who were there, and it was just a really good way of everybody kind of getting together and learning more about each other. Did want to give sympathies. I know we've had a lot of public safety people pass away for various reasons, some of them very tragic. In the police department, Lieutenant Don Webb passed away, and I know I was able to attend the funeral. It was very, very heartwarming to hear about his life, very emotional as well, because he was in the choir at the church in Jamestown, and that was very emotional. They had his choir robe laying over the chair, and just want to give condolences not only to the family, but also to the department. Someone spoke earlier about Safety Town. I know the one at Barber Park is gearing up, and I had the opportunity to stop by the one at Lewis Rec Center and to see these kids and see these parents and all of the police officers helping them. It's something that I wish could be replicated every 2 weeks. It's just amazing how the kids are just so eager to learn and learn more. Let's see, it's been a while since we've been here. The Human Rights Academic Awards at Revolution Mill on June 29th, thanks to the Human Rights Department and to the commission and everyone involved on that. A very, very nice event. And I believe that's all I have, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Hugh?
Yes, Madam Mayor, I do have a couple. It has, as Councilwoman Boothberg mentioned, it has been a little while. Had a great opportunity to engage with the small business, of little kids, and with the Create Me organization, and speaking with the kids and getting the questions from them. They were 8, 9, 10, 11 years old, and really expected some simple questions, but ended up talking about the environment and the economy. Really, really engaged, great questions, and enjoyed that. Erica Mobley is the one who runs that small business there on Battleground, really special. I also had a chance to join with the Congolese community in Center City Park, where they had a silent protest on stopping the violence and the killings in the Democratic Republic of Congo, and was happy to help support, because we have a lot of immigrants in our community, and their families are impacted and affected by it, and making sure that the awareness is there was very important. 4th of July, a couple things happened there. We had a great fun 4th put on by the DGI team, and I'll say that in conjunction with that, Old North State Medical Society had the opportunity to do some vaccinations and testings, and did a record number there of 185 vaccinations, especially with the onset of the BA.5 variant that is impacting so many of us now. It was really good to see that. I also want to give a quick shout out and offer my prayers of strength to Kim Norris. If you know, you know, and just keep her in your thoughts for strength for her. And then left there and went to the 73rd annual Kirkwood 4th of July parade. It was my first time attending. It was really exciting. It was a great turnout. Some terrific floats. Again, the 73rd year celebrating that in that community for the 4th of July parade. And then I'll say finally, I want to thank the folks over at ECPI, Campus President Jacobson, and also Barbara Hawkins for inviting me to be the commencement speaker for their graduation just this past Friday. The love in that room, we were at Carolina Theater, and the love in that room for the students, for themselves, but also for their professors. It was just incredible to see that, and to see them looking at achieving their degrees. A lot of them are adult learners, and they've gone back to school, and just seeing them get that associate's degree, and then also in the same breath saying, now I'm going for my bachelor's, was just so excited to see. And I know that that's going to be, and it is an economic driver for Greensboro and our community as folks continue to educate and learn. So I was really excited to have those. And I will also say one more thing. Mayor, you mentioned the adult recess sponsored by Parks and Rec. Awesome event. I was there. It was a bunch of fun. It was some hula hooping going on. There was some cornholing. It was amazing. I was at a game of the Jumbo Connect 4 or Connect 8 or whatever it was, and just bumped into a gentleman, and we started a conversation, and he just happened to be here with his family. He's with Toyota, and it's what started off as a Connect 4 ended up as economic development and plans and workforce development training. So it was really, when these things are happening, like we talked with Topgolf, it's not just the activity itself, it's those things that circle around it. And so just another firm connection for what we're doing here at Greensboro. So I had fun at adult recess, and the hula hoop was still challenging for me. Thank you, Madam Mayor. That's all I have.
He told me he was only speaking 45 minutes. So, I mean, it's just a joke.
Mrs. Hightower.
Well, I got 46 minutes.
Yeah.
Because we haven't been here in quite a while. So, but first I do want to give my sympathy to public safety on the passing of several of their members, particularly in, the police officer, but the Mural and Schaffner families. And today I attended the funeral of Journey Snow Schaffner. Very sad, very heart-rendering, the loss of a 6-year-old who had not even begun to live. But during her 6 years, heard that she was always a bright, shining light everywhere she went. And so when life has to be short, you're glad that it was a good life, even though the end was tragic. And so my condolences go out to them, and especially to the family also of the first African-American fire chief, Ray Flowers, who passed last weekend. His funeral is Friday, this coming Friday, 12 at Bethel AME. And I'm so glad we dedicated that station, number 7, in his honor and named it after him. And he could see it while he lived. The news even went back and had a story on him and showed him talking about how, that was really one of the biggest, most highlights of his life and honor. So we don't know how we impact people. So we never know where the road is going to end for any of us. But as long as the path was a good one, I'm glad his travels were great here in our city, and he certainly will be missed. I enjoyed this Cambodian community with Mary Kay and the mayor, and I believe Justin was there as well on last Saturday. And I was glad to help them pull in some of the state legislators to come to that event so that they could talk about the importance of getting licensure and certifications in their language. And they talked about how many of their members had to memorize the test because they could not read and understand the language. And memorizing the test doesn't mean they understand it. That just means they knew the answers. And so that really wasn't safe for them, as well as for others traveling up and down the road. What I would like to suggest about the legislation that they are asking to have done is that we make it part of our legislative agenda when coming up, so that our Guilford delegation knows we stand in support of that. I also would like us to do a resolution in support of that, so that the Cambodian community knows that we do all as council stand behind this request. It's really easy, and it should have been done a long time ago that they got it in their language to understand. But now that we know, we do better once we know better. So I hope we can do that, those two things as well. And yes, 46 minutes. Currently, there is a hiring fair sponsored by Publix at Barber Park Event Center. And it was yesterday, Monday, and today. from 8:30 to 3:30. And I will say that I heard that that has been one of the largest job hiring fairs that they've ever seen. It was probably well over 140, 50, probably up to 200 people who stood in line in the heat from the Barber Park Event Center all the way down to Simpkins. And there was probably close to 100 that got a job on site yesterday. And then today, there was about that many more people there. And so that just tells you the importance of making sure $15 an hour is a starting wage, is a minimum wage. Because people have gotten jobs and benefits that they have not had access to, and it will make a difference in their life. And we're helping to make that possible. And that's important that we continue to do that. So I don't apologize to anyone, okay, for making sure I say out loud what we need to do that is right. And that is to make sure that people earn a decent wage to provide for their home and their family. And I'll never apologize for bringing that conversation up. I will continue to make it a topic until we've done completely better at it, 100%. On last Saturday, we did dedicate the street after my dear friend, Carolyn Coleman. And I'm thankful to all the council members who showed up, and I think everybody almost showed up to come out and to honor naming this street and honor her by naming this street after her. It solidifies a legacy that she will forever remain in this community, and it will always highlight the work of civil rights and justice that she has done. And she is at the corner, this road starts at the corner of Martin Luther King. So Martin Luther King and Carolyn Coleman Way intersect. But not only do they just intersect the streets, their lives intersect because of the work they put forth for our community. And so when I really saw that, it really just touched me greatly and realized what an impact she will make for years to come. And I'll move on. But the street dedication was followed by the Gate City Coalition, Carolyn Coleman Week of Peace, and they did several events, ending with the one on Saturday, where they had just community day and fun. But they also provided a plaque to the son to let them know that we appreciated him sharing his mom's life with us. Most recently, as many of you know, I've been pushing for my MWB program to get the SBE, the Small Business Enterprise. It was on our legislative agenda. It is now, the bill has passed, HB 292, I believe, as SB 292 and HB 3. It's SB, yeah, SB.
Senate bill.
Senate Bill 292 did pass. And so, Mr. City Attorney, since the governor doesn't need to sign this and doesn't just a local bill, we can just now insert that in our local ordinance. Can we not?
Yes, it becomes a part of our local.
It's part of our local ordinance, as well as our MWB program. Correct?
I think it's up to the manager to figure out how to implement it.
Yeah, we will have to absolutely implement it, but it is now another
It's
tool.
authorized.
It's another tool that was a recommendation of the prior Griffin and Strong disparity study, one of the 12 recommendations that we can now say we have done. And so I think with that being said, I think we will be able to start to make a difference.
Can I make one
As
comment
well
about
as we craft this particular piece of that program.
Can I make one quick comment about it? So it passed the Senate Rules Committee the day before they left. It passed the House on the Senate floor that afternoon, and it's passed the House on the floor that next morning. That is what what's known in the legislature as a miracle.
So that
It's known in the legislature as a miracle. No.
Oh. Well, I made a lot of phone calls, but thank you. I also have gotten concerns about Randaman Road, and I know we did a Randaman Road corridor study that's old. Need to blow the dust off, there's nothing done. But there've been some incidences along Randaman Road lately that not good incidences, robberies and et cetera, that make me think we need to really be looking in at cameras for safety purposes along the corridor. I know, Mr. City Manager, you have some, ideas as far as the gateway corridors, but for safety purposes, as we look at that, I would like for us to look into some of that and see how that, not the flock cameras that catch license plates. These are different. And so there are concerns that I've heard from residents out in that area about what we're going to do. And so I think we need to do that as well. And then finally, I did want to bring up the work session on incentive policies. We did talk a little bit about it tonight. I know, Mr. City Attorney, you clarified some things, but perhaps in maybe not the next work session, but maybe the next one, that I would like for us to maybe talk about the incentive policy and make sure that those policies, that particular policy does address and that there aren't any loopholes anywhere, if you will. So, and that's my 46 minutes. And that's my 46 minutes, and I approve that message.
Thank you. Dr. Wells?
I too attended the job fair that was held during the Carolyn Coleman Week of Peace. And there's a very important presentation at the public library this weekend. 3 journalists will be there. I think it's at 4. And I'd like for you to check to make sure you have the right time. But these journalists will be sharing with us at the library. There will be a food giveaway on Thursday at the Renaissance Shop at 2:30. And we are inviting those who need food to come for that. I'd like to express some heartfelt sympathy for the Flowers family and for that family of Pastor Nancy Wilson, who passed away, and her funeral will be on Friday at Mount Zion at 12. So we're gonna have a conflict, can't go to both funerals. But my heart goes out to them. And I probably have done more things, but I won't talk too long tonight. You've heard enough.
Thank you. Mr. Outling?
As others have said on prior occasions, one of the regrettable things about going last is that others have said so much one would otherwise say. So I won't get into community events too much. For those who are interested, they can certainly view my social media page. Remarkably, one thing that has not been mentioned, we have an election coming up. And so I obviously encourage people to be aware of an election, general election on Tuesday, early voting through the 23rd. Includes all of the council positions, including mayor, and obviously an important bond referendum, possibly allowing the city to borrow about $135 million. There's ample information on the subject on the city's website, so I encourage people to take the opportunity to go vote. Secondly, I was very excited to hear Mr. Holston visit Create Me. I think my daughter Clara is probably just coming back from one of Miss Erica's classes now, and so it's a great organization. She does a terrific job giving young children exposure to all different types of opportunities, including a sewing class that my wife taught last week with lots of cute kids and lots of little sewing machines. And so I'm glad to hear Mr. Holston made a visit recently. On a more substantive point, obviously a lot of community residents have gotten information about their new tax bills, and some have concerns on that topic. This city council probably a month or so ago, had discussion about adopting a program to provide some tax relief to community members under certain circumstances. Mr. Manager or Assistant City Manager Davis, could you give an ETA in terms of when there'll be further discussion? At the last council meeting on the topic, there was input from, I think, all council members on that subject. And so I think it'd be helpful for the public to know about next steps and timeline.
We intend for that program to be ready for implementation later in the fall. We just don't have it ready for council's review, but it will be prepared.
Great. Any sense generally about kind of when it will be ready for council review
Well,
to hit that implementation target of the
Sure.
fall?
We know that blanking on the term now, appeals to the various figures are underway. So we kind of like for that process to play out so that folks are working with, we're pulling actual updated numbers from the county's website, but that should be, before the summer's out.
All right, excellent. That's all from me this evening. Thank you.
A quick question about that subject.
Okay.
Mr. David, there already is a program for seniors, correct? And those with disabilities, yes.
That's
for
correct.
tax relief
Yes.
on their property taxes. Okay, I just wanted to clarify that.
Maybe a
Mrs. Hoffman?
further clarification is in order. I presume, Mr. Davis, you're referring to the county's program with regard to county taxes?
Yes, sir.
All right, and so to be clear, this is a city program that the council is looking at adopting with regard to city taxes.
Correct.
Right, I understood that. Thank you.
Mrs. Hoffman?
Yes, last week I attended a participatory budgeting project. It's actually in District 5, but it was the Guilford College New Garden Heritage Monument sign, which we dedicated and cut the ribbon. That was a participatory budgeting project from District 5. But, I've worked with the Guilford College Alliance, I think, since I've been on council in regard to several issues. So I was happy to be there, and sorry, Mrs. Thurm was unable to join us. That project was certainly driven by Willie Taylor, and Max Carter was in attendance that day and gave us his usual very interesting history lesson involving the history of the Quakers in that area of our city. So I was really happy to do that. Again, like everyone else, I think, our fire department family has really suffered great losses over the last several weeks, and we feel for them. I personally met the fire engineer, Rick Morrow, several months ago, and the team at our fire station number 5, which is on Westover Terrace. So, it's hard to believe that, I met them in April. We actually had a lot of food, wonderful food left over from an event that I had. And so a friend and I decided that we would just deliver it to their fire station around 7 o'clock or so that evening. And I had a chance to meet him and some of the others. So it's just really so difficult to believe that he's not here and that his wife is really still seriously injured, and they have 3 children, I believe. So, we just really keep them in our thoughts and prayers.
Mrs. Thurm?
Thank you. Yes, thank you, Councilwoman Hoffman, for attending for me on my behalf, or in addition on my behalf to the PB sign unveiling. It was very nice to see that project has finally come to fruition. It's been a long time coming.
Tammy, I failed to say, it is a really handsome monument sign that really just can't be missed in its location. So it's a really great piece of sculpture.
It is a beautiful sign, and I really, I know the residents really appreciate the work that city staff did to put this together. It too was a long time in coming. But it's in keeping with the area. It's in keeping with other signage in the community, and it's a real addition to that heritage community, and the residents truly appreciate it. I've been out of commission for a while now, and so I've missed a number of the events. I think the Coleman dedication of Carolyn Coleman Way was the last event I had been at for quite some time. So I'm looking forward to getting back out in a few days and getting back out to be with people again. So that'll be great. And I'm looking forward to that. I'd just like to reiterate Justin's comments. There is an election going on and we'd love to have a great respectable turnout. Right now, the numbers are very low, but there's still time. So please come out to vote. Early voting continues, as Councilman Outling said, Justin said, through Saturday, and the election is next Tuesday. So please be sure, take advantage of the rights that we have by coming out to vote. It's an important right and responsibility. So thank you.
Mr. Holston just asked for equal time with Mrs. Hightower.
Absolutely. I have 8 more minutes. No, just very quickly, Mayor Pro Tem Johnson did mention it earlier on in the meeting regarding the 777. And not to say that I'm in support of the rollback, but I do think that we can look and rethink and reimagine that program and how it's going to impact and how we're going to logistically roll that out in our community. So I am in support of that, and Mayor Pro Tem Johnson, I join you on that.
Thank you. I'll be brief. We do have another meeting. This council has another meeting on August 1st. We have National Night Out on August 2nd. The new council will be sworn in on August 11th. And their first meeting may be August 23rd, just for people listening who need to adjust their calendars. Everybody's talked about all the wonderful events that they've been going to for the last 30 days. I just want to mention that I was very honored to be appointed by the governor to the local government employee retirement system. I think that'll give us great representation in the city of Greensboro, and it is my honor to serve. Thank you. Mr. City Manager?
Before that, you reminded me that I've forgotten something. I wanted you all to know that President Biden and Vice President Kamala Harris invited the director of Gate City Coalition to come to Washington and be a part of the end of violence and guns. And she went and learned a lot and brought some things back. I just wanted to say that. Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Nothing from me. Thank you.
No? Mr. City Attorney?
Me either.
All in favor, say aye. Aye. We are adjourned.